But I want to also thank, Mrs. Appas. I want to thank the parents for bringing their student out tonight. I want to, on behalf of the board, and thank, Mr. Solomon. He's our coordinator of visual and performing arts. So if it's okay with my colleagues, would you like to go down and see some of this phenomenal work? Okay.
So, today we are learning that acrylic pouring is a relatively new fluid painting technique, and that in this technique, acrylic paint is made into a pourable consistency with the addition of glue and water. The liquefied paint is then layered with a silicone release spray in a cup and then applied to the canvas. The silicone keeps the colors from blending together, but when the silicone breaks while pouring, it creates cells of color that reveal other colors that were added into the paint pour. Now, depending on the choice of the color, the medium, and the additives, different effects are created.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead and do that for me? Explain, go ahead and do it. Explain what you're doing while you're doing it.
So, as we see now that my friend here, David, is going to first pour paint into his cup, and after he pours paint, he will then add a little bit of silicone, which keeps the paint all the silicone is like a barrier, so it keeps the paints from blending into each other and making a brown mushy color. So as you see right now, after pouring the silicone, you will pour another layer of paint depending on what color you want to use and what kind of design you would like to make. So you can use as many colors as you want, but so when you're finally finished and you're pouring and the paint is all like watery, then that's when you realize that you've used too much silicone and it won't come out all pretty, basically.
Why don't you go ahead and do one too?
So it looks like you're using the cups, like you used that cup before?
Yeah, they use them at school, so, yeah.
So you just wash them out
Yeah,
and use them?
yeah,
They've already done it once with,
yeah.
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 Actually, they've done two of them already.
So how many, you said you could use as many colors as you want, how many do you usually use?
Well, let's see. For me, I'm only going to use at least 4 to 5 colors to make a nice looking galaxy theme.
Is that like these or 4 to 5 colors?
Let's see. Yes, I think those are from 3 to 4 colors. As you can see, there's white and then blue, purple, and there's like a little skin color.
Are these still wet?
Yes, they are. These are drying.
So you can't hold them up to show everybody?
No, but we have these over here that you could use.
So they're not as shiny after they dry?
No, yeah, they usually dry to a matte.
Because it looks shiny right here. Because it's
Yeah,
still
that's
wet.
what,
That's
that's
because
just
it's
wet.
wet.
Very wet.
Yeah, like
Very
just
Don't hold
board.
it up.
Do some over there.
Okay, we're ready.
So you don't have to shake it up, just like that.
Yeah, you don't wanna shake it up because then it'll start to mix the silicone and all the paint together, yeah. Yeah.
That's one of the creative ways that students what you're doing is you'll notice you have one student who likes to pour generally in the middle and another student who likes to do a line around. And as you get more interested in it and playing around with it, you get an idea of what you're thinking in your head, and you're really testing to see what comes out.
Yeah.
The fun part is what he's doing now, I think.
Yeah. And at school, they've done it where they flipped it, so they put it down on top of it and they flipped it and lifted it up. It's kind of messy, so we didn't do that. They have pulled strings through it, so they poured it over strings and then pulled the string through it. And then there's I've seen ones where they use like colanders and poured it through colanders.
I like that.
Yeah. These ones are not, so because you have to use an acrylic paint. Yeah, that's why we're wearing aprons and we have everything covered, so it does not come out of clothes. Yeah.
So how long does it take to dry?
Usually a couple days. It depends on how much paint is on there.
I'm wondering how you're gonna get these back.
I'm gonna put a lid on it and carry it. Yes. Yeah.
See, each of them will be placed in a tub, and it should be put in the tub. Yanking them out there, we'll take the cables down.
Beautiful. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
So you can see how just by tilting it, it can change things. Absolutely.
Again, on behalf of the board, thank you so much for sharing your talents. I know. It's a lot of work and the tables and stuff, so we'll wait till they. Yeah, we did. Okay. Let's give them another round of applause, please.
I didn't hear.
Yeah, we did it earlier. That's okay. That was a lot of. Okay, at this time, the Board of Education is reconvening into open session at 7:05. Roll call, please.
Ethan De La Rosa, student representative, present.
C.J. Johnson, present.
Susan Smith present.
Daryl Peden, present.
Dr. Locke, present.
Martin Rex Kidzior present.
Robert Verdi, present.
Susanna Lopez present.
Maribel Maddox present.
Okay, tonight, Mr. Holguin is not with us. Early this evening, the Board of Education convened into closed session to discuss student discipline cases, public employee employment appointment, public employee discipline, dismissal, release, non-reelects, conference with labor negotiator, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, and settlement of claims. I have to report out on claim number 575547. A motion to deny was made by Mrs. Smith and seconded by Mr. Johnson. The vote was 4-0. In a matter of employee number 200578, a motion was made by Mrs. Smith and seconded by Mr. Johnson to approve the notice of intent to dismiss and statement of charges for classified employee number 200578. This was approved by the Board of Education by the following vote, 4-0. For employee number 149043, a motion was made by Mr. Johnson and seconded by Mrs. Smith to approve resolution number 2019-20-60 and reassign the certificated administrative employee number 149043 for the 2020-21 school year. This was approved by the Board of Education by the following vote, 4-0. For employee number 195639, a motion was made by Mrs. Smith and seconded by Dr. Locke to approve resolution number 2019-20-62 and reassign certificated administrative employee number 195639 for the 2020-21 school year. This was approved by the Board of Education by the following vote, 4-0. For employee number 169211, a motion was made by Mr. Peden and seconded by Mr. Johnson to approve resolution number 2019-20-61 and reassign certificated administrative employee number 169211 for the 2020-21 school year. This was approved by the Board of Education by the following vote, 4-0. For employee number 181390, a motion was made by Mrs. Smith and seconded by Mr. Johnson to approve the release, non-reelection of employee number 181390. This was approved by the Board of Education by the following vote, 4-0. Item employee number 200085 was pulled this evening and no action taken on that employee 200085. Thank you. Okay, at this time, the Pledge of Allegiance and Inspiration will be led by Ethan De La Rosa, Student Board Representative by Canyon Springs High School.
Can everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And can everyone please stay standing for my inspiration? So today my quote is from the late Kobe Bryant, who was an inspiration to most as his impact is still being felt across the world. Anyways, the quote is as follows: everything negative, from pressure to challenges, is all an opportunity to rise. I chose this quote because I feel like it complements MVUSD's slogan about lifting to rise very well. We should lift each other to rise at all times because every challenge thrown at us is just to be seen as an opportunity to grow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to F2, dates of future board meetings. April 14th, regular meeting, closed session at 5, open session 7. April 28th will be a study session, topic LCAP and strategic plan, open session at 5. May 5th, regular meeting, closed session at 5, open session at 7. May 12th is a special meeting. The topic is awards and recognitions, which will begin open session at 4. On May 19th is a regular meeting, closed session at 5, and open session at 7. At this time, Dr. Ketzior will provide district updates and informational reports.
Thank you, Dr. Locke, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to our board meeting, and thank you all for being here tonight. And tonight, I'm sharing highlights of from the past, since we've met the last time from the last board meeting, and this does not include everything that has happened. It is only, a snapshot. So if you have a program or something where somebody's won an award and it's not mentioned here, it's just because there are so many, they cannot all be mentioned. Please look in the end of the week news for a more comprehensive list or comprehensive, where you're recognized. But sometimes people say to me, well, you didn't mention this. I can't mention everything. They don't give me a lot of time. So I want to say tonight, our mission statement is we want every student to graduate from high school and be college and career ready. And tonight we're recognizing our 4 comprehensive high schools because they have made monumental milestones in improving that data. And all of them are, all 4 comprehensive high schools are above 92%. And one's close to 96%. And we're very proud of that. So thank you, everyone. You should clap for that as a community. Yeah. And then our 11 commitments, one of the ones I want to highlight tonight is commitment number 8. and it's our leaders and accept the responsibility and sacrifice, ensuring equity for all. Being a leader is not about the power. Leadership is about creating change, improvement, and making the sacrifices needed to get the job done. I'd like to ask Tamara Kerr, the principal of Canyon Springs High School, and Donna Woods, who is the CTE Cyber Academic Pathway Patriot Academic Coach from Canyon Springs High School. I would like for you to come forward, and I'd like for you to join us at the microphone there. I don't know why Ms. Kerr is taking so long to come up here, but and Mrs. Woods, I know you love to be up here, and Ms. Kerr, thank you for being here tonight. So the reason I want to share this is because rarely do you get, many times, most of the emails you get are about things we haven't done well. But this particular email was sent on January 31st, and it said to Donna Woods and Tamara Kerr and your team, and this is your whole team at Canyon Springs, on behalf of the MVUSD team, and I think it was Murrieta Valley that visited you, and a lot of other people. Was that right? Yeah. Thank you for the outstanding academic pathway presentation you provided us yesterday. From the time we walked into the office where your students were interacting with us to walking into the library, which was ready for us and included lunch, critical information, and a bonus Canyon Springs goodie bag, to being able to see a Canyon Springs classroom and hear from students and staff, every detail of our time was thoughtfully planned. Your MVUSD, that's us, MVUSD, Moreno Valley, because they're MVUSD too, is very fortunate to have such highly competent and passionate instructors who positively impact students, their families, and their community. You have given us a lot to consider as we build our Cyber Patriot pathway. Thank you for sharing your journey and providing the resource binder for us to use as we plan ours. I'm sure looking into the upcoming months, and I'm grateful you created solid footsteps for us to follow. Kudos to your team and thank you. So on behalf of the Board of Education and the Cabinet and our school district, your demonstration of one of the 11 commitments here truly embodies what we want to have happen when people come to our schools and visit us. And I want to thank you for taking that time and for making them feel so welcomed, and they haven't stopped talking about it. I saw one in the airport, last weekend, and they said, aren't you the superintendent in Moreno Valley? We were at your Cyber Patriot pathway. Okay, So, what you did that day spoke volumes, and you always do that, but I wanted to recognize you because of what you contribute to our school district. So would you like to say a few words? And Claudia, did you give them their certificate? Okay, I didn't see. I'm just making sure. Can you make sure that's on? Because you have to, yeah. Thank you.
Technology, we have amazing kids, and the event that you were talking about gave us a really great opportunity to showcase the talents of those students, and our Cyber Patriot program, our cybersecurity instructors. We have incredibly talented people in that program, and just to kind of put a little plug in for them, they have 2 first-place teams in the state, which is highly exciting. And just very proud of what they've been able to do. There's so much student leadership within that group, and that's what our visitors saw that day, was student leadership. I tell people all the time, and I'll say it publicly here, I have the best kids in the city.
Thank you again, Board. We were so honored. It was 7 different school districts that came that day, and we were honored again. They got to see so much support from our parents, our students, the incredible work, our board, our administration, and that the pathway is truly collaborative throughout our district. So we are honored to be able to share that with people, that you give us the time and the opportunity to do so. It's always very, very rewarding when we receive such emails and high compliments and praises to our students for their hard work. Another student today, we hosted another professional development and had 40 educators from across 5 different school districts in STEM, where English, history, science, cyber were all coming together to collaborate in robotics and STEM activities. And the professional development team came all the way from Northern California and Louisiana because they've been so impressed with our program here. So thank you again for giving us these incredible opportunities. And thank you, parents, for entrusting your students in the program. We are thrilled how fast it's growing and the incredible support and students that we get the honor to serve and teach. So it's an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations. When we show you the next slides, you're going to see on each of them a different goal. And in Moreno Valley Unified School District, we have 4 goals. And the first goal is about academics, of course, students being proficient in English and language arts and technology. The second goal is about graduating from high school and all the efforts that it takes in that area and being college and career ready. And the third goal is about improving learning environments for students. And the fourth goal is about partnerships. So on the bottom of each slide, you see the goal. So nothing that we do is not intentional. It's excellence on purpose. It's on purpose, and it's the reason why we improve, because all of our actions are related to our outcomes. And there are 14 outcomes and 4 goals. And these are used in our principals evaluations and used as a tool to monitor student achievement within our district. So I'm proud to say on Valley View High School mock trial team, are they here? Not them, but is anybody here from Valley View High School? Okay. When you mention their name, they have a little, enthusiasm. But I just want you to know that it was 27 teams in Riverside County, and Valley View High School's team has improved every year. And this year last year they tied for number 3. This year they were number 2, and they almost were number 1. I know they,
Dr. Kitts here, before you move, would you also let them know that our team was the only team that was integrated?
Yeah. Well, that had African American students.
Yes.
I had a parent meet with me on Sunday, and he said, Dr. Kidzer, I looked at the other teams. His son is on the team, and he said, I wondered why they didn't have any African American students. And he said, I was so proud to see our team had African American students, and that they were who they were and what they were doing. It made us very proud as a community. So I just want you to know that we're very proud of our mock trial team, and other people said we were the team to beat. So we're very proud of that. Thank you. And then Donna Woods and Tamara Kerr, and what an amazing team of people. I don't even know everybody that worked on this grant. But this is a community college partnership K-12 strong workforce program, $650,000 3-year grant for IT support, technology equipment, professional development, field trips, internships, and apprenticeships, software outreach, coach stipends, and release time to enhance an already, as you can tell, 11 school districts have visited here to see this program, but we received this grant from the K-12 Strong Workforce Program to develop the grant, to develop the program into greater things for students to be able to do. So Donna Woods and Miss Kerr, and I don't know who all worked on it, but congratulations. And then, I don't know if LaToysha Brown's here, is she? Okay, I can't see. Oh yeah, y'all are hiding and stuff, but they're building a new school at Moreno Valley High School. It's going to be completely redone, and she's going to have a performing arts center like nobody else has, and it's going to be quite the eye of the community. And so one of the things Ms. Brown is trying to do is create a school that's called the School of Innovation and Arts. And so one of the things that she did this year was create a robotics team. Now, I know Dr. Buster's here tonight, and you helped with that in the funding and helping get that started. But Ms. Brown, you got a teacher involved, and you got some. Is Mr. McPherson here? Okay. And you got students involved. Are any of them here? Okay. We didn't ask them to come, but I just, you're back there and you're looking back. You're looking at the board over there. Okay. I was wondering, are you looking at somebody? But I want you to know, last weekend Ms. Brown, was it 27 teams? Over 40 teams. And, they've never competed before. This is the first time they've had a robotics team at Moreno Valley High School, and they came in second place. Is that right? Yeah. So they've been invited. This is a nationwide competition. They've been invited to compete in Houston, Texas, April the 14th through April the 18th for the first World Championships. And how many teams was it? 47? Yeah. So can you imagine, first time, look what they did, Moreno Valley High School robotics team. Aren't you proud of them? So then, is Esperanza Arce here? Oh, there she is. Okay, hiding in the back. Okay. So, thank you. She did something that, I was like, yes, we need to do this. And she did all this. And Miss Kerr was there, and there were board members there, Miss Maddox and Miss Lopez. But, we had a Spanish spelling bee. And one of the things we want to do is reinforce the students' ability to speak Spanish, but also to spell and write and communicate in Spanish. And it was quite something. The first place was from Canyon Springs High School, Jenny Rosales. And the second place was from Karamis Zermino from Valley View High School. So it's the first time we've had this, and we're very proud of this opportunity, and we're going to continue that. So thank you all for participating in that. Again, the County Science Fair and Engineering Fair were winners. This year, Dr. Buster, was there like 200 and how many projects? 200. I want to say 275. Probably more than we've ever had. Oh, there's Dr. Omnum. Dr. 400. There were 400.
Wow.
Well, I'm glad I asked, because I thought 400. Now we've never had that many before, and. We had 400 at the county.
No, the county had 400.
Okay. I can't even get that. But anyway, what I'm really proud of is that 2 students from our county award winners are going on to the state. Ava Rodriguez from Vista Heights Middle School and Anthony Sade from Mountain View Middle School. Thank you, John. Will compete in the State Science Fair on April 20th and the 21st at the California Science Center. And thank you, Dr. Ahmad, for what you did. Dr. Ahmad, isn't that you? Thank you for what you did to help make this happen. Thank you very much. And then Odyssey of the Mind, what a wonderful program we have in our district. The schools that participated this year were Butterfield Elementary, Northridge, Mountain View, Seneca, Vista Del Lago, and Vista Heights Middle School. And on Saturday, February 29th, that's what they did. And then now we have 3 schools going to the state, and those 3 schools are Mountain View, Northridge, and Vista Del Lago. And they're going to compete at Moreno Valley High School, where the state tournament is going to be held on March 21st. And I invite all of you as a community to go see these kids in action, because it's quite something. Marcia, Dr. Locke, didn't your grandson participate in it? Yeah. So, it's really quite something to see them, and what's being held right here in our community, and we're proud of that partnership that we have. Last night at Mountain View Middle School, there was a speech tournament. John Black is the principal there, y'all, if y'all didn't know. That's not a kid from there yelling. And he's proud of his school. So last night, Badger Springs, Mountain View, and Vista Heights participated. We wanted all 6 middle schools, Raphael, but Mr. Garcia, with over 30 students competing. And the next competition is on Saturday, March 21st at John F. K. Middle College High School in Corona, California. And every year, our teams compete. Palm is usually one of the, and Vista Heights, they usually win in those, so we're very proud of what they do. Palm Middle School was featured at the Clippers game on Dr. Harris. Is that Dr. Harris by you? Okay. Mr. Oken. So you can see people get excited. I think that's great. The Clippers game on Friday, February 28th, Wally Leonard wanted to give back to his community, and he'd already given backpacks to every student in the district, but this time he wanted to give to Palm Middle School and recognize his teachers who helped him as a student when he was there, and now they're going to get even more Chromebooks and technology and more support. He's sending all kinds of opportunities for students there. So we're very thankful for the Clippers and what they did for the students at Palm Middle School. And then, I don't know, Miss Carr, if you're going to yell like this, but Canyon Springs High School, their band and pageantry competition, they placed second in the Scholastic AAA division for the Winter Guard Association of Southern California. And they're really doing, amazing things and really being competitive. So we're very proud of them. At Canyon Springs and Valley View High School, the junior art exhibit for the Riverside County Fair, they had 17 first place winners between those schools. So we're very proud of what they do. Canyon Springs High School had an anti-bullying club fundraiser on Sunday, March 1st. Dr. Locke was there, Mr. Holguin, myself, and to raise funds for their anti-bullying club. It was quite successful, and Michelle Gomez, isn't Michelle here tonight? Yeah, she was awarded County Employee of the Year, but she is the advisor for that club, and they are always out doing something, and thank you, Ms. Gomez, for what you do with that club. And then at Valley View High School, they were in the African American Academic Bowl, and they took second place. And each student on the team that competed received a brand new laptop. And so it was at UC Riverside. And Valley View High School's Color Guard took first place in their division at the Winter Guard Association of Southern California at Mira Mesa High School. Moreno Valley High School dance team does it again. This is the second time they've won. They won on Saturday, February 29th and Saturday, March 7th. And they won first, second, and third place in hip-hop, boys and girls divisions. And what a dance team they have, Miss Brown. Are you back there still? Okay. And then on February 25th, Canyon Springs High School staff played students in a basketball game. And Daryl Peden was one of the players. He's right here. His birthday is tomorrow. And he played, they told me he played 4 times on this team, Mr. Long. And so you might want, Mr. Coach Long, you might want to get him to come over there and with Valley View and help out. You don't look like you're encouraged, but, I'm telling you, they say he can play, So that was really a good time, and thank you, Canyon Springs, for hosting that. And then tomorrow is the Superintendent's District Advisory Committee, where student voice is heard, and that's at 1:30 tomorrow. So I encourage students to attend. And this last Saturday, we had a food pantry grand opening at Edgemont Elementary School. We're going to be doing this several times a year. And we fed over 250 Moreno Valley families. It's Lynn Sheffield here, Dr. Sheffield, who oversees the Wellness Center, and Connie Edwards and Patty Rucker and Amanda Denniston, the Student Services team. Thank you for all helping with that. And then the Parent Project is ongoing. And on March 11th, which is the next date at 6 o'clock, this is to hear different speakers to help parents with helping their children do better in school and better academically and behaviorally. And then we have a middle school, I don't know if you all know this, but we brought back middle school sports, and we have a water polo team. And on Saturday, April 11th and 12th, they're going to have a girls and boys competition where they see who is the champion. And then there's the flag football championship this Sunday at Canyon Springs High School at 12 p.m. And so, I hope you'll come there and support them. Our Moreno Valley Education Foundation has a Night of Opportunity. It's a new foundation that's being begun as a scholarship fundraiser for Moreno Valley Unified School District, but also to help teachers with projects in classrooms. This is the first time we've ever done this, and it's from 6 to 8 on April the 9th, and I hope you'll join us there to support our district. I'd like for you to watch this short video. Thank you to Tilden Coyle, who provided this on Canyon Springs High School, and he's here out there. So, you want to raise your hand? Yeah, there you are. It's 37 seconds. This is Canyon Springs High School. This is what's happening there. Look at that transformation. And that's thanks to the community, Measure M, that supports that, and we're transforming all of our high schools, and that's one of the promises we made to the community when we decided not to build high school number 5, is to transform our existing high schools and provide them the facilities that they would need to be 21st century learners. And then I want you to continue to look at Moreno Valley High School, the Performing Arts Center. I mean, the students tell me, and when I'm around them, they say, Dr. Kidzura, you should see the walls are going up on the Performing Arts Center. And they're watching this happen at their school, because if you've ever been to Moreno Valley High School, they don't have a theater. They've never had a theater like the other 3 high schools. But this time, they're going to have a Performing Arts Center, right, Greg Solomon? Which is different than a theater. So you'll want to be looking at that as it continues to be built. And then one of the things we're real proud of is Ridgecrest Elementary School's parent drop-off. This is going to be done at more elementary schools, but it's the redesign of our schools so that our community can be safer when they're dropping off and picking up students. And you'll see it already in place at Ridgecrest, and it's being designed at different elementary schools. And then I want to recognize Women's History Month, and I want to recognize Dr. Marcia Locke, who's our board president. She had perfect attendance till 7th grade because of chicken pox. Oh, that's not her. Oh, sorry. I was just reading down. I knew that, okay? But I'm glad everybody's paying attention. So Marcia Locke was the head majorette who used to twirl fire, and she's still twirling it. But and then Susan Smith. She's our board clerk. She toured Europe and Middle East and folk dance troupe as a teenager. And she's quite the character, you know, so she goes out and does things. And then Susanna Lopez had perfect attendance until 7th grade because she got chicken pox. But she's cured now and she's fine. And then Maribel Maddox is a book club member for over 10 years, and her book club is not just any book club. There are people in it that have people that are elected to high power positions. So when they read together, they also make decisions.
Dr. Kidzura, can I just jump? What's your favorite book?
Oh my goodness.
Oh, did I put you on the spot? Okay, never mind.
I don't think it's one she can say out, or can
No,
you?
Where the Crawdads Sing. Where the Crawdads Sing.
Oh, you can say that one out loud.
She recommended that to me, and I read it. It was an excellent book. Anybody here? Pick it up.
And then I want to recognize Cesar Chavez Day on Tuesday, March 31st. We won't have a board meeting till after that, but I want to recognize him, and I want everyone to remember that we cannot seek achievement for ourselves and forget about progress and prosperity for our community. Our ambitions must be broad enough to include the aspirations and needs of others for their sakes and for our own. So thank you for coming this evening, and thank you for celebrating the achievements and accomplishments of the Moreno Valley Unified School District.
Thank you, Dr. Kidzura, for sharing that.
I forgot one thing, Miss.
Yes, go ahead.
I feel bad. This Saturday from 8 to 1:30, there's great. I mean, that means they're wonderful workshops for 5th grade parents, for 5th grade students to 8th grade students, like transitioning to middle school or college awareness, as well as bullying prevention and other social emotional workshops. Breakfast and lunch like In-N-Out will be provided. Please register at your school. There's 50 spots per middle school. And this is this Saturday. It's March 14th. Isn't that right, Esperanza Arce? And it's at Mountain View Middle School. Is that right? Or is it every middle school? It's at Mountain View. Okay, Mountain View. So I didn't want to miss that because that is this Saturday, and I know some of you will probably want to go.
So
Thank
does
you.
that mean if you have a child who's going to be a student at Sunnymead Middle School, you can still go to the Mountain View?
Anybody can go.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody can go.
Great.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, now we're going to move to, again, thank you, Dr. Kidzura. That's, we really are proud. We have a lot of things going on in our school district. I mean, if we wanted to hear everything, we'd be here till midnight. So thank you for consolidating and everything you do. Okay, moving to, we're going to item F4, the Action Program School Report. And tonight, we have some very special guests. And we're, as a board, we are very pleased to have the Action Program students from March Mountain High School here tonight to give us their school report.
that one?
Yes.
This is it.
This is it.
Here we go. Hello, my name is Jason. We are in the Usher program at Mountain High School. We would like to thank our staff and for meet my members for all allow us to come here tonight.
Good job, Jason. Good job.
Thank you.
This one, right? Yes. Hello. My name is Diego, and we are here tonight to invite you to our 4th annual Moreno Valley Action Games Rally Around Fitness. This event will take place on Friday, April 17 from 9 o'clock a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Amber Pollard. Some activities that we do in this event as we live to rise are basketball, bowling, volleyball, baseball, and one of the most exciting, hockey. Thank you, everyone.
Good job, Amber.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Corey Williams. In this event, we will. In this event, we will. And.
It's okay, son. Take your time, man. You got it.
In this event, we are able to compete with other high schools, students in our district. We build friendship, follow rules, and have fun. One of our district commitments to excellence and purpose and improve our variety skills and apply these streams to our lives. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your support. Live to rise. Thank you and good night.
Okay. Does one of the teachers or Mr. Quintero want to share a few words?
Miss Handysides is here.
Yes, Miss Handysides. Someone? Yeah, everyone.
So my name is Steve Quintero. I'm the proud principal of March Mountain and March Valley School. March Mountain has the action program, and they are the students that put a smile on my face each and every day. So it is my honor to serve the action program. So thank you very much for that opportunity.
I don't really need to say much because they said it all. It's a blessing to work with wonderful students and have the opportunity to support them, and we're grateful for your support for them. Thank you.
My name's David Cole. I'm one of the Action Program teachers, and we do thank you for your time and your support. We have a great group of students. They did marvelous tonight. We have great support from our administrative team here tonight. We have a good team of teachers. This will be our 4th annual rally around fitness. The students love it. Transition age students from across the district get to come and participate, and we're gonna have fun. Thank you.
Well, as you can tell from the students that came up, we have amazing students at March Mountain High School, and we invite all of you to come that day. It's a really fun time, so thank you.
On behalf of the board, we want to thank you for coming. You did wonderful. You sharing information about your program. I know we're super proud of you. I'm sure your parents are super proud of you, and your educators are proud of you. So can we give these young people a hand? Okay, and most of all, I think we've all written down, and I'm sure we'll give some reminders, Claudia will, for us to remember April 17th, 9 to 1, rally around fitness. Thank you. Okay, at this time we're going to move to item F5A, resolution number 2019-20-55, National Women's History Month. The Board of Education of the Moreno Valley Unified School District hereby resolves that March is designated as National Women's History Month. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
I move that we approve the resolution number 2019-20-55 as presented.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Peden?
Aye.
Dr. Locke?
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Moving to F5B, resolution number 2019-20-56, Arts Education Month. The Moreno Valley Unified School District Board of Education designates the month of March as Arts Education Month. Do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Peden?
Aye.
Dr. Locke?
Aye. The motion passes 4-0. Moving to item F5C, resolution number 2019-20-57, Cesar E. Chavez Day. Board of Education of Moreno Valley Unified School District acknowledges March 31st as a day to celebrate the life and work of Cesar E. Chavez. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Peden?
Aye.
Dr. Locke?
Aye. Okay, now we're going to go down and present the resolutions and recognitions, but I do want to mention, as the board, we love shaking hands. We like hugs also, but because of the coronavirus tonight, what we're going to do, we're going to bypass the handshaking due to, the recommendation, and for the health of our students. Thank you.
We're going to do the awards first.
The awards first? Yeah, the awards. Okay, do that. We're going to start with the awards.
No, we'll get this after you guys are done.
Good evening. It is my honor and pleasure tonight to introduce and recognize our student and staff recognitions. We're going to start with attendance. I'd like to call your attention to the screens as I go through the awards. You're going to see in writing the school names, the student names, because it's important that they get recognized also. So I'm going to ask Dr. Sheffield, Amanda Deniston from CWA to come, and let's recognize the schools that have kept their attendance, their daily attendance at 95%, which does take a lot of work. And it's important because if students are in school, they learn. So we're going to recognize those schools. So let's start by recognizing our elementary school with a 95.7 ADA and an 8.9 chronic absenteeism, which we want to lower that. Those are students that are absent in 10 days. It can be consecutive or not, but we want to make sure that we have, good attendance from all of our students, and we work very hard. Northridge, can I have Northridge come on up? I see Ms. Joanne Katona, Assistant Principal. When I call the school, if anyone can come up from that school, because Dr. Katsura will call you anyway, so come on up. From Vista Heights, I see Mr. Hassan with a 95.4 attendance. Congratulations, Vista Heights. But I also want to mention the schools that you see. It says honorable mention, but look how close they are. So Landmark Middle School with a 95.1. Anyone from Landmark, please come on up. Landmark's in the house. I'm getting ready. Mountain View with a 95.2. I see Mr. Black from Mountain View. Please come on up. And then our high school, Valley View High School with a 95.3. Okay, let's do the other one too. I'm going to do 11. There. Yeah, yeah. If you have not gotten the pattern, if you are remotely connected to a school, come on up. I want to mention these schools also. This is something new that we're announcing because attendance is very important, and these schools also work very hard. We have the schools that we have Saturday STEAM academies in our district where we recoup attendance. What that means is the students come, they have STEAM activities, they learn, they have fun, but we can count that as attendance because they're making it up. These schools have also worked very, very hard. So if you are in the house, and I mention your school, you need to come on all up. We're going to start with this high school, 322 recovered attendance. Canyon Springs High School. I am going to recognize Landmark again. They Wait, I didn't even say what you guys did. They recouped 263 attendance. Vista Heights, 226. Is anyone here from Butterfield? I see Dr. Chalfant and Mr. McNutt, the administrators. They have worked really hard and they have recouped 452 attendance days. Mrs. Johnson, if you can come back up. Would like to acknowledge and congratulate Ari Long, freshman at Valley View High School. Ari, would you come on up, please? And then her parents, I'm going to say Coach Long and Coach Long, come on up. Ari was the press enterprise. She was named as the Riverside County Girls Athlete of the Week on January 27th, 2020. And you might ask why. Well, let me tell you. They highlighted her performance that week for the Eagles as averaging 22.5 points per game. Obviously, she plays basketball, and registering her second triple-double of the season. For this season, at the time of recognition, she had been averaging 17.8 points, 7.2 rebounds, and 4.5 steals per game. Ari Long, congratulations. And I called Coach Long and Coach Long because these are her parents at Valley View. Coach Long is the varsity girls basketball coach, and Coach Jim Long is the boys varsity basketball coach. And dad. Congratulations. The Board of Education would now like to recognize and thank the following students for their efforts in serving as docents for the Anne Frank Traveling Exhibit at Landmark Middle School. So I'm going to ask Mr. Garcia to come back up, Mrs. Cobian to come back up to help us recognize the students. After training with the Freedom Rider Foundation and the House of Anne Frank, they learned the history and shared thoughtful and compassionate information with those who toured the exhibit. I toured the exhibit and was so impressed with the students, the knowledge they had about Anne Frank, but also how they presented the information. I believe that they changed the culture of the school. Very, very proud. I was so amazed there were middle school students. So one more time, when they come on up, we're going to congratulate you, and then we'll take pictures. But if parents, if you want to be in the picture, you can join us. I'm going to call you, and if I mispronounce your name, you're so important that you are to say your name correctly, because I believe names are important. So, Deja Bailey. Deja Bailey. Dea. Where are you? There you are. And I didn't model correctly. I should have done a fist, but I'm just going to call your names. Andrew Chamorro. Andrew. Angel, it looks like it's Chocoteco. Can we clap for Angel, though? Cynthia Garcia. Cynthia. Dane Grant. Dane. Jaden Grimm. Jaden. Jose Herrera. Jose. Talon Holmes. Talon. Joseph Horowitz. Joseph. Lamaya Jackson. Lamaya. Stanley Jackson. Stanley. Anthony Juarez. Anthony. Ana Montejano. Ana. Juan Rodriguez. Juan. Mia Jane Thomas. Mia Jane. Victoria Vasquez. Victoria. Congratulations. Dragon. Dragon Walker. Dragon. Amaya Williams. Amaya. Juan Rodriguez. Juan. Okay, I'm going to ask Mr. Garcia, he's a very proud principal of Landmark, to say a few words.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you. It makes me so proud to be up here to recognize our docent nights here. Here at Landmark Middle School, these students worked very, very hard to represent Landmark, and I am so proud to be able to present them to you. They were trained by Aaron Gruel and the Freedom Riders, and by the motto of teach one to teach another. And they held tours of the Anne Frank traveling exhibit for several weeks at Landmark, and now they came with zero experience as docent nights, and I was so proud that as I went through the exhibits, they just were so knowledgeable of Anne Frank and the history of that era. And so please join me in giving them one more round of applause. And I do see one more docent there, Christian Castro, that I do want to recognize. Come on up, Christian. And of course, last but not least, our Assistant Administrator of Instructional Improvement and Academic Coaching, Ms. Diana Kobian, who put in a lot of work as well in organizing the event. We now would like to recognize the middle school students with a perfect score. You heard that correctly. Perfect score in the CASP
testing, which is the spring testing that we do in either math or ELA, English Language Arts. So the students I'm about to call up received a perfect score. Did I say that enough? Perfect? Perfect. So administrators also, as you hear your school, if you could come help us acknowledge your students. We're going to start with Badger Springs Middle School. Rebecca Lopez, perfect score in English Language Arts. Rebecca. Thank you. For mathematics, Caleb Moreno from Landmark. Caleb. From Mountain View, Rusey Payne Quahotor, I think I said that right, for math. From Vista Heights, we have Aubrey Lightfelt. The rest of the students are all from Palm. So Palm, I'm just going to be calling names for perfect scores in mathematics. Sandy Ballard, Palm. And I see Mr. O here, their assistant principal. Thank you for joining us. Broden Black. Dale Bolido. Dale. Kelsey Costello. Julian Castillo. Chloe Angela Cayetano. Pierce Chantham. I'm thinking how to say this name, so I might ask the person to say it. Shivan Prakash. Did I say your name correctly, sir? Yeah. Thank you. Santo Quintero. Danielle Ruiz. Janelle Sanico. Sergio Peña. Jesus Ruiz. And Jonathan Serrano. All right, everyone, perfect scores up here. Can we have a hand for all of these students? Perfect scores. Be careful. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, don't.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Would now like to recognize our 4 comprehensive high school for their diligence, their work, their passion, their sweat in improving the graduation rate which indicates that more students are receiving the diploma and are getting college and career ready. So with that, and we rose from 89.4 in 2018 to 92.2 in 2019. We continue to exceed state and national averages in graduation rates. So when I call your high school, please staff, anyone, student from that high school, please come and join us to recognize all this hard work, because it takes a team to do this. So let's start with Valley View High School, Mrs. Johnson, 96.8. Vista Del Lago, 95.4. I see Dana Dunham's here. Moreno Valley High School, Vikings. Miss Brown, Latosha Brown, and her staff. I see Miss Lisette Nava. Counselors. And Canyon Springs High School, Mrs. Kerr, 92.6. Can we have a hand for these high schools? 92 point and above, 96 graduation rates. Congratulations, principals, to you and your staffs. Amazing. Thank you, all of you tonight. And one more time, can we acknowledge everyone that was recognized tonight? Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Resolutions. And so which one are you doing? Women's history. To start. All right, I'd like to ask Dr. Ama Ahmed, Professional Development Specialist, and Michelle Gomez, Counselor at Canyon Springs High School, please come up to the podium. These two ladies have already been honored by Riverside County as School Employees of the Year for the county, and we're happy to have them up here tonight, not for that, but to recognize National Women's History Month, and they are examples of women who have achieved and women who are doing a great job, and we're proud to have them working for our district. Every year, the president issues a special Women's History Month proclamation designating the month of March as National Women's History Month. American women of every race, class, and ethnic background served as early leaders in the forefront of every major progressive social change movement. And American women have been leaders not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in the abolitionist movement, the emancipation movement, the industrial labor movement, the civil rights movement, and other movements, especially the peace movement, which create a fairer and more just society for everyone. Despite these contributions, the role of American women in history has been consistently overlooked and undervalued. In the literature, teaching, and study of American history, which is why we are proud to announce that the Board of Education of the Moreno Valley Unified School District proclaims the month of March 2020 as National Women's History Month and encourages all residents to become aware and concerned about the contributions and impacts made by women throughout history. So I'd like to add my own thank you to that, and are these the same?
Yes, they're the same.
Thank you. Could you ladies come up and say a few words?
I'll be brief. On behalf of women making history everywhere, I just want to say I'm very honored to represent women and keep moving forward.
I just want to say good evening and thank you, Dr. Kitsira, Cabinet, and Dr. Locke, and the board members. It is my honor to accept this resolution on behalf of all the women in the world, our daughters, sisters, moms, and especially the young women we teach here in Moreno Valley Unified School District. I would like to take this moment to thank a very special women who have influenced me the most, my mom, for always having trust in me and for always being there for me. And I, again, thank you, our district, for honoring us in this one. Thank you.
You know, it's always good when you have a friend that you can smile with, because you know you have the butterflies inside of you. So when you see the friend smiling, it makes you feel a lot better. So I have arts education, and we want to recognize some people because this is Arts Education Month. Kessie Apis, she left. Okay. Well, I know who's here. Both you two. So we're talking about Ebony Houston, the dance teacher at Valley View High School, and Mr. Greg Solomon. Since I have the mic, I'm going to say what I want to say. Ebony and my daughter, they're in the same field. I don't know how well they know each other. I know they know each other, but my daughter doesn't like me to talk about the things that she used to do. But the other day when we went to LA to the Clippers game, I stood on the floor, the same floor where my daughter used to perform. And when I told her that I talked about her, she got angry again. She said, "Don't talk about that anymore." Anyway, I hope you're not that way. So let me go and read this. So arts education, which includes dance, music, theater, and the visual arts, is an essential and an integral part of the basic education for all students in all grade levels, including pre-kindergarten and kindergarten. As you already know, the Moreno Valley Unified School District was the first district in California to adopt the Declaration of the Rights of All Students to Equity in Arts Learning, committing the district to bringing access to high-quality public arts education regardless of their background, their culture, their language, or their geographic location. Moreno Valley Unified School District is extremely proud to have 41.27% of students participating in the arts. Thank you, Greg. More than 2% higher than the state average, is 39%. So Greg, thank you again. And Dr. Ketziora. We know students benefit from arts learning in the areas of cultural understanding, readiness for learning and creative thinking, cognitive outcomes, emotional intelligence and expressions, social interaction and collaboration, and preparation for the workplace and lifelong learning. Isn't that right? Okay. So therefore, on behalf of the Board of Education of the Moreno Valley Unified School District, I am proud to proclaim the month of March 2020 as Arts Education Month. So I have three here, but let me see if the name's in here. But Krista, I do want. You're not? Okay. So. Okay, you will give it to her? Okay, so cool. But I want you to come up, and I want both of you guys to say something. Because, see, sometimes people don't think dancers can speak, so we're going to show them that dancers do. Oh, I want y'all to know that. I already know it. Thank you so much. Thank you. I know I'm not supposed to shake hands, but I did anyway.
We'll be right. Hi, guys. Good evening, family. It's with great honor that I received this proclamation. I am a very passionate dance educator. I am an advocate for all the arts, as I know and I believe that it's a transformative education for students of all ages. I take great pride and honor in offering a subject that I know liberates and empowers our youth. And so it's with great honor, again, that I receive this and that I work in a district with a superintendent that we have, the board that we have, and our VAPA coordinator that really advocates for the arts and our children. I see it transform their lives every day. So I'm grateful to be here. Thank you for having me.
I am truly blessed to work in a district that values the arts. And I travel in the state, and everywhere I go, I tell people the Moreno Valley Unified School District is the best district to work for because they value the arts. And they don't say it, they do it. And we have a board and a superintendent and a cabinet that appreciates what goes on in the classroom in the arts, and they strive to see it expand. We have work to do, but I know they're behind us, and I know that the community is behind us. So I thank you for allowing me the opportunity to work in this district. Thank you.
Okay, everyone. It's an honor for me to bring forward, on behalf of the board, a resolution recognizing Cesar Chavez Day. So I'd like to bring forward Ms. Villa, Director of English Language Learner Department, as well as Teresa Fuentes de Reyes, one of our parent ambassadors, if they would come up and Okay, so real briefly, Cesar Chavez lived his life dedicated to improving the lives of thousands of farm workers through sacrifice, tireless commitment. After 8th grade, Cesar Chavez was forced to quit school and work in the fields in order to help support his family. During that time, he developed a strong work ethic and respect for the farm workers. It's also important to add and to note that he was a labor leader, he was an organizer, and he was a strong civil rights activist. He also co-founded the National Farm Workers Association, which he's known for, co-founding that organization with Dolores Huerta. Cesar Chavez believed that it is not enough to teach our young people to be successful while forgetting about progress and prosperity for their community. He spent his lifetime forging a legacy of service, conviction, and principled leadership that served as a beacon for Americans. In honor of his life and his legacy, I am proud to announce that the Board of Education for Moreno Valley Unified School District proclaims March 31st, 2020 as Cesar Chavez Day and encourages schools to participate in activities and that teach about the contributions he made to this country and to all of its people. Thank you very much. Either of you would like to say a few words, please do.
I would love to.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Peaton. For me, it's a true honor to receive the Cesar Chavez Award. This is the 3rd time that I've received it on behalf of the district, and I have to tell you that it's hugely meaningful to me. I myself, like Cesar Chavez, was a farm worker of 7 years, and it was under Row 18, if you all remember, I've said this, this is the 3rd time, it was under Row 18 that I decided that I was gonna come and get an education. And I'm very thankful for Cesar's tireless work. By the time he was in 8th grade, he had attended over 37 schools. He was a migrant worker. And so there was a huge gap in his education, but that did not prevent him from changing the lives of countless others, of tens of thousands of individuals. And so I'm very thankful for his life. I'm very thankful for his legacy. And he coined the slogan, "Si se puede," and I say, "Se sigue pudiendo." Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's a great honor to be here and receiving the Cesar Chavez resolution. It's a great example, like talking about Cesar Chavez is talking about gratitude and talking about leadership. So he's a good example to follow for the future generations. So, sí se puede. Yes, we can. Thank you. Good night.
That does conclude our recognitions for tonight. Thank you all.
Okay, now we're going to move to item F6, staff responses to public comments made at previous meetings. Dr. Kaziora, do we have any responses?
Dr. Locke, there are none. Thank you.
Move to item F7, public comments on agenda items. Any person requesting to speak to any item on the agenda may do so at this time or when the item is addressed by the Board of Education. Individual speakers shall be allowed to speak for 3 minutes on any agenda item. The Board of Education shall limit the total time for public input on each agenda item to 21 minutes. Board Bylaw 9323B, Section 5. Per Board Bylaw 9323, twice the allotted time will be provided to a member of the public utilizing a translator. Do we have any comments for public items? Okay. 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 This time, Mr. Bleckert.
So we'll address item F3 at the beginning. Superintendent's reports. In the past, there have been many, and we've talked a lot about the test scores. And the superintendent really recently called a meeting between me and the chief academic official and the IT guy, and we went over some of the reports and things like that. And I feel free, Ms. Maddox, to comment on anything that went on in that meeting, because I have, I would really like to see something like that broadcast. But in case anybody knows, and I don't know if you made a report to the superintendent of that, but if you feel free to comment on that, because if you think I don't have an understanding of what the reports say, or how they work, or in the crosstabs or working with that, because as we were going through the meeting, I actually stopped them and said, okay, let's go deeper into the statistics and stuff like that. I want to say that just because it will maybe put some at ease or give them a more comfort level of when I come up here and speak. Because like when I come up here and speak, I'm not speaking off the top of my head. I have researched it doing that. And I will give you an example of former council member George Price. And over the years, a lot of people thought we didn't like each other because we had a lot of battles at city council going back and forth, and we had a lot of agreements. But we never took it personally. And he even said many times up at the council, even though I might not agree with what you say or what you're doing it, your reports that you sent in to us were really well researched, and your comments were valid to the issues. So I'm pointing this out to make sure as we're moving forward, when not only of myself, but when anybody comes up here to speak, and even though they might not have all the information in that, they're coming up here because they're concerned. They're concerned about their community. They're concerned about their kids. They're concerned about what's going on. So in a lot of cases, and I think some people take this stuff personally or that, and in my case, I don't. Unless somebody brings it personally to me, we have discussions. Council member from Riverside said that, Chuck Conder, said, when he was speaking with me and stuff on things. He said, we're having discussions and we're debating the stuff. And that's where we should work for in all this. And that's where we should approach this, I believe, if we're going to build a better community and a better school district.
Thank you, Mr. Bleckert.
Are we going to address F6?
Yes, F6.
So to further on that, because it's been mentioned in the staff reports, responses and that, we went back and forth, and specifically one of the things that I had brought up, is when you do the CAF scores. I would say item 1 and 1A on the top of the list are the English and math test scores. I brought them up many times at this board, asked many questions about them, not really received any answers. Two things on the last report that really, and I brought it up, before I had asked, and I'd ask at the city, when you have the PDF reports and all that stuff before we come to the meeting, that we have those available to us, because we're making public comments at the start of the meeting. If we don't have the reports, we don't know what we're talking about. Actually, 2 years ago, on the CAS reports, the school district did put up the PDFs before, so we did. In the last one, I didn't find it where those PDFs were. So what's the point in coming up here talking about something you don't know anything about until after the meeting or after the report is went? It's part of the deal of transparency and being honest with the subject matters at hand. Now, I pointed that out, and at our meeting that we had with the chief academic official and the IT guy, as I pointed out many times, the English test scores were inflated, or the gains in them were, because the percentage gain in the years were not accurate. So that lends me into question, when I'm seeing stats and statistics and data like Mr. Peden has asked about, that is not accurate what I'm seeing, what's happening when I'm not looking? That's what gives me pause, and many others pause for concern. Because we don't know what happens outside, or when you go into the walls behind there, but we can only draw the conclusions from what happens or what we see out here. And this is going to have some profound effects, I think, which is happening and which has happened in this last election, which I will be talking about in a little bit. Because, again, I think the public is really getting woke. I think you will find that out not only in this election cycle, but in the election cycles in the future. And we will address that in my next comments coming up.
Thank you. Now we're going to move to item F8, public comments on non-agenda items. The Board of Education encourages public comments. During this section, staff may briefly respond to statements or questions, or may ask questions for clarification. The board may refer to staff or other resources for factual information, direct staff to report back at a subsequent meeting, and/or direct staff to place a topic on a future agenda. If someone wants to lodge a complaint against an employee, the appropriate form may be obtained at any school or the community education center. Individual speakers shall be allowed to speak for a total of 3 minutes on non-agenda items, regardless of the number of issues to be addressed by the individual. The Board of Education shall limit the total time for public input on non-agenda items to 21 minutes. Per Board Bylaw 9323, twice the allotted time will be provided to a member of the public utilizing a translator. With Board of Education consent, the President may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation depending on the topic and number of persons wishing to be heard. The President may take a poll of speakers for or against a particular issue and may ask that additional persons speak only if they have something new to add. Board Bylaw 9323, B-C, Section 5. At this time, we have 3 speakers. Mr. Bleckert?
Recently, before this board came a agenda item to support Prop 13, the Prop 13 2020, which is a $15 billion school bond. I was very disappointed in the whole agenda that went on with that. Because there was, oh, well, here's a $15 billion school bond. The 5 members said, oh, it's for the kids, let's vote for that. No discussion of what was going on, why, or pros and cons on it, which I believe should have been. Because there was a hidden little spigot in that little Prop 13 that would have allowed local school districts to double the amount of assessments on there. But it made my heart glad that the citizens in the state of California, which KFI just called it as I was driving in, have defeated Proposition 13 by a 54 to 46 margin. They didn't believe, or if the ads were, oh, there's asbestos and lead in the schools. You know, that stuff hasn't been around or been banned for 30 or 40 years. And if that is the case, the firefighters that were advocating that or in the ads should be at this school board and at every school board demanding, if that is the case, why haven't you fixed it? Not, we need more money to do that. That's what a big problem is. On top of that, 7 of the 8 local school bonds in Riverside and San Bernardino County went down to defeat. Measure A, $715 million bond at Riverside Community College, 57% no, 63% no on Prop 13. That is a vast and significant turnaround. In the past 2 decades, almost school bonds have passed at an 80% to 90% clip, and they're getting rejected back and forth. We've had discussions and political debates on this, but people, I think, of this city, of this county, and this state are finally waking up to the true facts of what have been going on. $20,000 per student in the state of California is spent. It is not a revenue problem. It's an allocation of resources problem. And again, I was very disappointed in the discussion to endorse Prop 13. Now, if you would have endorsed Prop 13 on complete and accurate information, I would have been okay with that. But when you were not giving that and just rubber stamp it, look at what the people said by their vote all across this county and this state.
Thank you. Marissa Salas.
Good evening, Dr. Katsura, President and Board. My name's Marisa Salas, like she said, and I'm a social work student at Cal State San Bernardino, and I'm with the understanding that Dr. Katsura has shared some of this information with you, but I just want to let you know that our class was tasked to do a survey of a local area to see what needs we could meet in the community, and when we surveyed your city, we found that the overwhelming response was school safety. We were a little surprised to hear that, but doing a little research, we found that that was probably attributed to the incident that happened last year. And so we decided to reach out to the schools and see what we could do to come alongside one of the schools or multiple schools and help implement a program to help further school safety in your area. When we did reach out to the schools, we've got little to no response with the exception of one school, and we were really surprised at that reaction from a district that had been undergoing some public scrutiny. And so we decided to go online and do additional research, and we found that you had multiple avenues open to your community and parents, and we were really surprised that that was the response. So we decided to then further investigate what was the disconnect between parents not understanding what it was you were offering and the idea of the community that there was more that needed to be done. We also decided to go ahead and create a QR code card that had additional resources that you might be offering that parents would not know about. And then in being able to contact and connect with Ms. Cardenas over at Moreno High School, we found out you guys have already been doing this. And so I feel like a little bit of a wet blanket coming here and telling you we found this wrong, we heard this wrong, we heard that wrong, because to come here tonight and see just the great response of the things that you've been doing is really impressive. And so again, I just kind of wanted to reiterate that there is still a bit of a problem with disconnect of information being let out to parents, community, and students. And I just really appreciate your time, Dr. Kidziora. I appreciate all that you've been doing. And like I said, we're creating an additional QR card in English and Spanish, which I understand you also have, but it just goes to further resources that parents and children will be able to use. And we're awaiting those, and we'd be happy to share those with you. So thank you for your time. Thank you for all you're doing. I'm really glad we came tonight and got to just see all the programs you've got in place, mock trial, the fitness rally that's coming up. It was just a really neat thing to come and see, like I said, from the beginning, hearing something negative to see all the positive that you're doing. So thank you for all the hard work you're doing for our kids. And I look forward to hearing a lot of neat things coming out of your school district again. Thank you.
Thank you. Carmen Roselle. Is Carmen Roselle? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So that closes public comments on non-agenda items. Moving to item G, consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as amended.
Do I?
Did we amend it?
No, as
I
presented.
move that we approve the consent agenda as presented. Sorry.
Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Peden?
Aye.
Dr. Locke?
Aye. Okay, now moving to item H1A, student discipline cases 525 to 528. We're going to take student case 111-17-18 and student 5041-19-20. Do I have a motion to approve those two cases?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Peden?
Aye.
Dr. Locke?
Aye. Motion is approved 4-0. Now we're going to move to student discipline case 060-19-20. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move that we approve case 060-19-20.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Peden?
No.
Dr. Locke?
Aye. Motion carries 3-1. Now for the next item, Mr. Peden's going to excuse himself. Oh. Good idea.
Can you call the case number, Dr. Locke?
Yes, it's case 057-19-20.
I'm recusing myself from this discussion and vote for a conflict.
Thank you, Mr. Peden. Okay, do I have a motion to approve 057-19-20?
I'd like to make a motion.
Oh, he made
Yeah,
a
we
motion.
approve it.
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Dr. Locke?
Aye. Motion approved 3-0. One abstention.
Recuse. One
Recused.
recused.
Thank you, recused. Okay, now we're moving to item L1A, the 2020 California School Boards Association, CSBA Delegate Assembly Election. Dr. Kidziora, can you share information about this item?
Dr. Locke, this is for the board to vote on the delegates that have been presented to you. And are there any questions about this item, or is there any discussion? Or
Any questions or discussion?
Do we already have 2 people from our district on the delegate assembly?
we do. We have C.J. Johnson, whose term expires in 2021. And we have Jesus Holguin, who has an evergreen appointment as long as he's on the board, because he was the CSBA president. So we have 2 people. And because of the Brown Act, it's not recommended that we have more than 2 people on that, or any group of people.
Any more questions? Do I have a motion to approve the slate as presented?
I'd like to make that motion.
A second?
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Peden?
Aye.
Dr. Locke?
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Moving to item L1B, first reading of the Meeting and Notices Board Bylaw 9320. Dr. Katsiora, can you share information?
This is to, Dr. Locke, this is to move the start time of our meetings to 4 o'clock from 5 o'clock. So closed session would be from 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. And then the open session of the board meeting would begin at 6 p.m. And this is a first reading to allow the public and other members of our community to review this, and also for the board to review it, and it will come back at our next board meeting as a second reading.
Board members, any questions or comments?
What can somebody explain why we want to move it?
Well, we received, we had a discussion with the board, and we've different board members in the meetings that we've held, in the individual meetings that I've had and the agenda review with the president. It's been suggested and recommended that we begin our meetings at 4 o'clock so that students could be recognized earlier, and that if y'all can add anything y'all want, I don't want to just say everything for you. Thank you.
Okay, I think one of the things is, by starting at 7 o'clock, when we do the recognitions and celebrations, which we feel are very, very important, it's, our students, young students are not getting out of here until, 8:30 or 9 o'clock. So we still want to do the celebrations and that, but by moving it up, we can have them come in, be celebrated, recognize them, and get them out of here and home, by 7:30 or 8 o'clock. Yeah, and this is just a first reading.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions?
So we put in here that the open session is going to be at 6. We don't have to put what time the closed session starts in this bylaw.
Yeah,
we don't have to put it, but our closed session would be 4 to 6 p.m. and our open session would be 6 p.m. And it can always be adjusted, as we have done in the past, because we've had different situations that have required us to, look at our beginning time and ending time so that we can accommodate public comments or different circumstances in the community. So that gives us flexibility in there.
I think this makes perfect sense as it relates to the young people that are here in terms of recognitions, respecting our staff and teachers' time, as well as public comment. As you noticed, we just got done with public comment, and it was already probably, I think at that point it was about 8:30 at that point. So folks that are coming here, filling out their cards, going back home, having to come back, or sitting around for multiple hours. I think this really helps to respect people's time and get us to a position where we can move things along and handle board business.
Yeah, I have to give it some thought because I need to wrap my head around that earlier time. Okay. It's the first reading, so give me some time to think.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, since it's a first reading, we'll be bringing it back next time. Okay, now we're moving to item L1C, P3 Reading and Literacy Action Plan. Dr. Katsura, will you share information pertaining to this? And I think we have some people to present.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Locke. I asked Dr. Buster, who's the Director of Professional Development and Digital Learning, and Carol Boyne-Held, who is the Director of Elementary Education, to present a short presentation on our update on P3 Reads, which is a literacy initiative. And I wanted the board and the public to be apprised of the progress and what we're doing in our district to make sure that students are reading by 3rd grade. And I appreciate both of you being here tonight and sharing this information.
Thank you for having us. I'm Dr. Sue Buster, Director of Professional Development and Digital Learning.
And I'm Carol Boyne-Held, Director of Elementary Education.
So it's our pleasure to be here tonight to share with you our P3 Read initiative for Moreno Valley Unified School District, which targets our early literacy grades, which is actually preschool. That's what the P is for, preschool through 3rd grade. So at your places, we gave you a copy of this PowerPoint, as well as our project implementation timeline. And then we also have an infographic that's coming to you from Claudia right now. So we've already talked about the mission today. We also talked about the 11 commitments already today. Dr. Kedziora has done both those things, but we wanted to highlight intend to be successful and collaborative, because this project really highlights that commitment in utilizing professional learning communities, continuing to practice teamwork, and to solve problems in a successful manner as we bring teachers together to collaborate and accelerate student achievement. So we have kind of a moral imperative. We really believe that our kids deserve it. We have made data, well, first of all, before we talk about that, there's solid research out there about students, predictors about student literacy. When students are reading at grade level by 3rd grade, they have a much higher success rate in terms of even, it can be a predictor of whether or not they will graduate from high school. It also creates engagement and motivation for reading, which is very critical for our future and 21st century skills, as well as students who are proficient readers by 3rd grade are more likely to be skilled at reading to learn rather than learning to read in the 4th grade.
So during the 2018-2019 school year, we began an intensive data analysis of what was happening with our reading programs. And we wanted to make sure that our students were reading by 3rd grade, so we began to plan our new initiative, which we called P3 Read. The reason why we called it P3 Read is because we wanted to include preschool in this initiative, because it's critical that the literacy begin very early, even in the home before they even begin preschool. But because we do have preschool, we wanted to make sure to include them and to be working with them to align our initiatives and our efforts. So as we began our planning and our work, we developed a timeline for us to implement this process. So in August of 2019, we actually ordered leveled book rooms for our, our 8 cohort schools. And in September, we actually were able to deliver those to all of the campuses. And I'll talk a little bit more about those in a few minutes. In October, our PD specialist received training so that they would be able to have the background knowledge and skills to train the teachers at the individual school sites. So we did a trainer-of-trainer model on balanced literacy and guided reading. And then in November, we were able to begin with our PD specialist training all of our teachers. We had 150 teachers trained from 8 school sites. In January, we were able to deliver classroom libraries to each of the classrooms, and we began our guided reading groups in the school sites. So for this first year of implementation, we selected 8 schools for the first cohort. They are Butterfield, Hidden Springs, Armada, Edgemont, Chaparral Hills, Creekside, Sunny Meadows, and Moreno. So the teachers from these 8 schools and the administrators have been through the intensive training and have begun implementing guided reading instruction and assessments at their schools.
So we looked at current practices in our
preschool through third grade, TK through third grade classrooms. And we had also recently adopted a new state board approved set of materials that are Common Core aligned, which is called Wonders. We are currently in our 4th year of implementing Wonders, but it's taken a long time to kind of ramp up with that instruction and with those materials because they're very involved. So as we looked at that, we framed it with what are the components of balanced literacy. One of the things that we've noticed is that our teachers and our current college programs aren't offering the early literacy instruction that our teachers really need to accelerate student learning. So we've had to kind of go back and look at that. We even looked at the RECA, which is the reading test that teachers have to take getting out of college. And it doesn't even have anything related to early literacy on that test, which we found interesting. So we thought we really needed to revisit that and frame it in our Wonders, because our Wonders is fabulous. It's a wonderful set of materials. It is well aligned with Common Core and is well aligned with balanced literacy. But by pulling out these components, we're able to really hone in on the various parts. So these are the parts of balanced literacy, and the big one that popped out to us is guided reading. Guided reading is an approach that teachers use during the English language arts block to work with students in small groups leveled and teach them strategies for problem solving at point of difficulty. So we then went and we said, well, let's look at what we got with Wonders in terms of guided reading. So we looked at the leveled books that came with the adoption, and they came with a few titles for each level of reader, but there weren't enough. And also, there weren't some that were low enough, because some of our students are really struggling at some of the grade levels. So we really needed to invest in books at the lower levels and in incremental baby steps to accelerate their learning as teachers work with them in small groups. So we outfitted all 8 schools with these large book rooms where you see these little books. You see the photo there shows 6 copies of the same title. The teacher has a scenario where they sit down at maybe a kidney-shaped table and work with students with this one particular title, calling out the problem-solving strategies that good readers use. So we made, again, just to reiterate, we made data-driven decisions in terms of implementing this program. We looked at our English language arts achievement and realized that we had a great need. We also targeted the instruction so that teachers are working with students at their level. They have been assessing their students currently. They just completed that and they're working in small groups. And they have been surprised at the levels at which their students are reading because they've been able to really work with them one-on-one. We also provided all 150 teachers with 2 full days of training. And on day 2, we take great pride in talking about how the teachers we had the training at their school sites, and we brought in what we call live children, like they wouldn't, they are definitely live, for them to practice on the run under a coach's supervision. And then of course, every day with their professional development specialists, they are getting coached daily as they work through guided reading on a daily basis.
So we wanted to take a look next at how we were progressing with the program. Because we're at middle of the year, we had to find the data that would match with the middle of the year last year. So we pulled our MAP reading assessment scores from winter of 18-19 and the winter of 19-20. And we wanted to look at the students who were scoring in the 2 highest levels, the high average and the high, to see, are we making any progress? Are we seeing any gains? And if we look at the graph on the slide now, you can see that most of the schools have made some very significant gains in these areas. So as we look to try to measure, because these are national norm scores, so I don't want you to confuse these with the CASP, but these are from the national norm scores through the NWEA assessment. But this is the data that we do have, and it does show that we are growing and increasing our student achievement in reading at these 8 cohort schools. We also took a look at the lowest category, what the principals will say is the red category, but the lowest category to see, are we decreasing the number of students in that category? And we also see improvement in that category. So we're pleased to see that we are making gains, and we are seeing increases where we want to see the increases and decreases in the lowest achieving levels. We are looking forward to see how our CAS scores come out this year, because that will give us a little more data to look at. But this is what we do have at middle of the year that we can look to see if we are making gains. We have provided other literacy supports to all schools. We have the Readership Grant in partnership with Riverside County Office of Education. This has been in full swing. We have also purchased culturally diverse and responsive books for sites. We have purchased WonderWorks intervention materials for all sites, the classroom libraries that Dr. Buster mentioned. We also have articulation between preschool and our TKK teachers. We have done our superintendent summer book giveaway the last couple summers, given out over 240,000 books to families. And I've already had families asking me if we're doing it again this year. We also are revising our curriculum for our Summer Learning Academy, and we think it'll be a little more tightened up with STEAM focus and a literacy focus. And we are trying to make sure that our reading materials, that we do have those that reflect the cultural makeup of our population in our schools. And as you know, as you were there just a couple weekends ago, we had our reading festival and lots of participation there.
So we'd like to open it up if you have any questions.
I have a few questions. Just to touch on the cultural makeup of our student population and ensuring that they have the reading materials that reflect that. You mentioned trying. Could you elaborate a little bit more? That's something that's very important to me, and I think we all would agree how important that is to our students in increasing their educational outcomes. So can you elaborate a little bit more about what
So I should have said trying to increase the amount of materials, because we have them.
Okay, good.
And we did that this year. We actually have worked with Scholastic, who put out a new series of books called Rising Voices, and it is specifically to target our type of population, and we purchased those for all the schools. And we're getting that information out. We're finding that more and more people are developing the materials. So when we get that information, we're getting it out to the schools and encouraging them to also purchase and have them in the school sites. So to be honest, several years ago, it was harder to find the materials, but now we're seeing more and more availability, so it's very exciting.
Can I just add
go
ahead. One more follow-up question. And then on your data, are you on the first one on page 12 on the progress update? You're showing some progress, of course. Are you concerned about Creekside?
Yes,
Can
and
you
I
speak
need
to
to
that?
address Creekside for you.
And yeah, could you? That'd be great.
So we have to look at Creekside a little differently. They actually are comparing different classes at the school. And this year, in the wintertime, they actually have 4 additional DLI classes that were tested. The prior year, they were not. So we're not comparing the same things. Technically, I think we need to say that this year is Creekside's baseline year, because it is different from what they had last year, and that's quite a few difference in students. So that's 4 full classes of kids. So we are looking at that, because that's the first thing I did, was to go through the data and start pulling it apart. And what I realized is that, wait a minute, we have a lot more students that took the test this year, and we realized then it was because of the addition of the DLI classes testing this year.
It was over 120 more students that were tested this past year.
Yeah.
So we felt that made a significant difference. We also want to point out that this data, is also reflective of students in K through 3rd, where the CAS data is only for 3rd grade. So we had to have something to measure them with.
Mr. Johnson, did you have something you?
Yeah, I don't know what page, the progress update. Page 3, I guess. One right here.
Yes.
Can you explain that one again? I can't hardly
Slide
read
12?
it. Yeah.
Yeah, slide 12 indicates The status of students on MAP from last year, and the winter collection of data, and then this year's winter collection comparatively.
Okay.
So this one is the students that were in the low category, which we, when we look at the continuum, we would say they would be in the red. So we want to see schools shrinking that population.
Okay.
Because if they're not in the red, they're moving towards orange, yellow, green, and blue. Where this chart indicates the students who are in the green and blue, which is high average and high.
Okay.
And we want to see those, that we want to see the green grow.
Okay. All right. I was trying to figure out.
It's confusing. It's confusing. So we have a really confusing chart, so we try to make it less confusing, and it's not always
what you're saying.
less
All right.
confusing.
Okay. And I guess the one on the other page it's just about the same thing, the progress update, about the same thing.
Yes, yes. So here, when you see over in the key on the right-hand side, high, average, and high, think of green and blue. On the dashboard, that's what we're really trying for blue, right?
Okay.
That's the best. That's the highest achieving. One could argue that when students are in the yellow, which is the middle, that could be close to proficiency. But because we're using the MAP data here, it doesn't directly correlate with CASP, especially since we're testing kindergartners, first graders, and second graders that don't take the CASP.
Okay. Okay. I think, let me see. Oh, yeah, also on the other page, I guess my question was, how closely are we working with RCOE? On the last page, page 14, other literacy supports?
Well, currently we have the readership grant with them, but we also attend a early literacy network with them. So we have both of those things going on at this time.
Okay.
And we've also gotten some financial support with school improvement, and so we've utilized that in this program.
Okay.
And then I just wanted to just point out that we did give you the infographic that kind of summarizes the things that are happening in the district in regards to the literacy.
Okay, I have Mr. Johnson, you finished?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, number one, I want to thank you. You know, I love this, and I was thinking about the speaker earlier when we were talking about what are we doing. The scores are what they are, you know, and where they're at. And I really applaud that, you know, it's a comprehensive, focused approach. We are going to see results. You know, the one thing, you know, some of the notes I wrote is it's data driven. We're looking at how the students are doing. And you said about you're identifying the need, you know, and looking at that and what do we need to do to boost those skills. And I remember, I think it was maybe in a workshop, someone had said, because we said, what, as a board, how can, you know, what are the needs? And if I remember correctly, it was something about more books, for classroom books. I remembered that, so.
Books.
But also, you know, I wish, and I know we have to rule it out and do so many schools at a time, so at sometimes to know, you know, the plan for the other schools, you know, because I really think this is powerful.
I'm looking back at Dr. Kidzior.
So
I know you're looking at me, I'm looking at you.
I know. Yeah, can you tell me now?
Are we ready to roll out for the remaining 15?
For the next schools, I thought y'all.
We were waiting.
Well,
for
go
you.
ahead and say it.
What are we saying? We highly recommend that we roll out for all the remaining 15.
Okay.
And sometimes there are extenuating circumstances, maybe with schools that have other big projects, but I think everybody's on board. You were with them this afternoon, what'd they say?
I was with them this afternoon, and they were asking for that, so.
I think that's powerful because I think we're going to see really good results. But I think as a board, you know, to come back, you know, because I think this information is critical to us to have so we can support the work that's being done. I do have one question about special education. their involvement in this. So can you tell briefly how any of the training, the support given to special education?
Yeah, they're included in everything. So when we talk about the materials that we purchased for the program, I just want to make a distinction. We purchased a big book room of those little books to be held in one central location on this campus for guided reading. But then we also purchased up to 150 titles, 130, 170 titles you'll see in January for each classroom to have independent reading books, because we're finding a lack of books in the classroom libraries. And there was a time in my career when you would just see a classroom bursting with books. Not so much. So we're working to build that. And then we're just adding the rising voices, culturally relevant text. So that's another layer. We want to keep layering that on. We want to keep backfilling into the libraries and purchasing materials for them as well.
But we're also training the teachers of special education along with the other.
So all of them are receiving, you'll see the assessment kits, they each received one as well.
Okay.
But we also have, you want to talk about, we have an intervention program for our teachers that dovetails with this.
So in addition to this, we also purchased WonderWorks, which is aligned to Wonders and directly supports the core curriculum. So our resource teachers are able to use that and communicate with the classroom teachers what they're working on, so then they can support that in the resource room. So that has been another purchase that we've done for them this year.
Okay, one more question. I'm thrilled with this. The instructional assistants. You know, I know in some classes we have them in special education, but I also know that some of the schools, as I've walked, schools with Dr. Ketziora, that, some schools have, instructional assistants in the classroom. So are we training them also?
Yes, if you notice on your infographic, that's one of the pieces that's research-based, evidence-based, that we want to have them trained. So we have some systematic approaches at some of our schools. We will be getting more systematic with that at our level, but we're still just kind of roaming in the unknown a little bit. And so we have one school that trained all of their instructional assistants. They call it guided reading light. And so they're perfectly capable. One of the big things that we talked about a couple of weeks ago was the fact that when teachers are working with students in a small group, what's happening with the rest of the class. So we want to make sure the instructional assistants know their role in helping to support those other activities in the classroom.
I agree. I don't want to take all the time, but thank you so much. I mean, this report it was very, very, very helpful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you for coming and for presenting this and implementing this great program in our school district. I'm a big supporter of reading and guided reading, and I love to see things like this coming forward that will help our students to be more proficient, so thank you.
Mr. Peden?
Oh, sorry, guys. One more. I need a clarifying question because we received this, but I don't know if the public didn't see what was on the PowerPoint. So it was briefly mentioned, the 3-year plan. On the PowerPoint, it talked about how we had a first cohort, which is 8 schools, but I'm sure the public is wondering what does that look like in terms of rolling it out. On this, it mentions a 3-year plan, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this says an additional 15 schools will participate by 21-22. So can you just elaborate on that? I just want to make sure that the public, hears what's going on and they're aware.
Yeah, I don't want y'all to. So when we began this, Mr. Peden, one of the things that we wanted was to have success. And we chose schools for a variety of reasons. And those 8 schools that we began with were because of the leadership, but also because we looked at competing initiatives that were going on in different schools, depending upon what they were implementing and what was their capacity to begin this. But we know now that within the next year, starting next year, we can do all 23 schools. The 15 will be added because we do know how to do this. And the other schools are asking for it, which is what we wanted.
Maybe even begging.
Yeah. And I just want you to know that we were, when we implemented PBIS, we were using a similar approach where we had cohorts of schools over a 3-year period. And that was quite successful for our district because other districts did it at wholesale. They did every school at the same time. And we knew that to build capacity within the people who work in our schools, they need support. And so we wanted to give that support in a concentrated effort. And now we know that we can extend that in the 15, because there's 23 elementary schools, and all 23 will have it now.
I just wanted to say, Mr. Peden, you asked earlier about Creekside, but I want you to also look at Hidden Springs. The converse is, what are they doing? And so that's a prime example of what Dr. Kidziora just shared, was that we were looking for schools that, kind of, how can we attach new to known? And that school site was already working on small group instruction. So now they're just skyrocketing. The other schools are looking to see what they're doing. So we're using, again, our 11 commitments tell us to work in professional learning groups. That's what we're doing.
Thank you. Well, I think you have received a mandate from the board tonight that we want to see that expansion to all of our schools. So thank you.
That's good because I ordered all the books.
Great.
Thank you for having us.
Again, thank you so much.
Thank you again for that clarification, Dr. Kidziora. Thank you.
Moving to I-1D, future agenda topics. At this time, board members will have an opportunity to discuss topics of interest for future board meeting agendas. Do any of the board members have some items that you would like to discuss for future agenda items?
Ooh, I hadn't really given it much thought. Do you have anything?
Nothing to add. Nothing to add.
I think I pushed my limit on the bullying policy, and I don't know if I'm ready to go wholeheartedly into something else. I don't know.
Okay, the reason I think is most people know that because of the Brown Act, we can only discuss things, in public and put it on the agenda. And so that's the reason I thought about putting this on, because we don't get the chance really to discuss what we want to have more information on, except unless we do it in the public session. The one thing I know, there's several, I loved the literacy tonight. It's really very helpful. And I think that's part of the reason of not trying to start a little earlier the meetings, because, to get into this information without being so late and everyone's tired. The one thing that, a topic of my interest, as a lot of people know, is the social emotional wellness. We're doing a lot of things in the district, but as even the social worker said, it's sort of hard to connect everything. You could take one person just to do that communication and those connections. So one of the things that I'd like to, at a future, board meeting, is talk about the social emotional wellness, because only if we talk about where we're at, where we'd like to go, and our needs, then we can start putting things into place. I know we have a lot of things going on at the different schools. I've seen them walk into classrooms with Dr. Kidziora. Some people are doing the calming rooms. They've got a lot of things, in place. So I think it'd be interesting as a board for us to know what currently is in place at a district level, regarding, the curriculum for social emotional, or are we doing a district-wide, we do the same thing, or are schools doing something different? What student support systems, because we know we don't have enough. No one has enough. This is not an issue just for Moreno Valley. This is a nationwide issue. They're predicting anywhere from, 10, 15% up to 25% of our students are in need of some, assistance, in the social emotional. And as we said before, that if they're not emotionally well, we cannot educate them. And unfortunately, it comes to the educators to try to fix it and to help these students. So I think this discussion would be, what do we have in place? What are our identified needs? What are some model programs within our district? Some of the schools, what are they doing? What are some model programs, statewide or nationwide? And also, I don't want to forget our staff members, because, they're under a lot of stress. So I know some districts are looking at mindfulness and what are we doing to support our staff, because the jobs are hard. But like I said, it's a very complex issue. I just like, to come and have the discussion, of where we need. So that helps us make, fiscal decisions, where our priorities are. I think the teams are out in the district. You see firsthand what the needs are. And it'd be nice to hear from all the stakeholders, the principals, the teachers, the classified, so we just get a good feel for, what's in place and where we want to go and how we as a board, how we can help. So that's, I know, as a long-ended, I'm sorry. Anything else?
I'll just jump in and support. I'm a big proponent for this this agenda item to remain on the agenda going forward. It does allow us to speak to each other about the different things that we're thinking about and be able to converse in this way to help, drive the direction of the district. And so with that said, I also want to just piggyback on what Dr. Locke was mentioning about social emotional sports. And one thing that I have been thinking about recently is that system of social emotional support for our young people, and learning more about how that system talks to one another when providing those specific support mechanisms to those students. So if we can talk about like different hypotheticals. If a student is having a hard day, what systems are talking to one another in terms of how do we identify that student? How do we know what services that student is currently being offered or currently in? What interventions are they currently in? So we can move really quickly on identifying, okay, who are their trusted, who are the adults that they trust, so that we can hopefully get them engaged to de-escalate them. Are they doing counseling? And being able to really have a system that can talk and do that wraparound service for the individual student. Even if there's community partners that are working with those students, are we communicating with those community partners right away about the different things that are going on with the students, so they can help and intervene, so we can make sure that we intervene before that student gets escalated and gets to a position where they have a hard time, and gets them into a place where they're, where there's some behavioral issues. I think there's a lot that we can do up the front. I would imagine we have those things in place. I would like to learn a little bit more about that, and having that on an agenda, maybe doing a presentation about that. And maybe there are some gaps, and maybe that'll help us to be able to identify what some gaps are and where we can help to fill those. And also, as the budget's coming up, LCAP's coming up, we've got to talk about allocation of resources. So this is the time to have these kind of conversations. And thank you for getting this on the agenda. And hopefully it'll stay there so we can continue these conversations for the benefit of our students.
Any other comments? Okay, moving to I2A, second reading of the board policy and administrative regulation 5131.2, anti-bullying. Ms. Maddox, will you share information about this item, please?
Coming before the board for the second reading, board policy and administrative regulations 51312, anti-bullying. This policy was presented the first reading at the December 17, 2019 board meeting. After input from the board and review by administrative and employee associations groups, the board policy and administrative regulations are being brought back to you for the second reading and adoption. The updated policies will be included in the newly developed District Anti-Bullying Handbook, Guide to Bullying Prevention and Intervention.
Board members, do you have any questions or comments?
All right. As you know, I'm looking at the timeline, which is on page 118, fourth paragraph down. Okay, so it says, within one business day, a staff member shall notify the principal of the report. When a staff member receives a report of bullying, within one day they notify the principal, whether or not a complaint is filed. Then it looks like within one day, with 1 day of receiving the report, the principal or designee shall contact the parent. I think that's good because I think parents want to know what's happening. So I think getting back to them right away and saying we're doing something is a good idea. And then within 2 days of receiving a report, the principal shall notify the district compliance officer. Is that you?
So that would, the district compliance officer, I believe that has to do with, not in my office, but my office does regulate what happens with the bully protocol. Okay. I'm not 100% certain on, okay, that would be Dr. Verdi.
Oh, okay. So now we have like a 4-day timeline. At the same time, is the principal then also doing their investigation?
So
they received the report, they've contacted the parent, and now they're going to send a report to Dr. Verde, but at the same time, is the principal doing an investigation of the report to?
So the compliance officer is not always informed. It's dependent upon the actual act of bullying and what actually occurred, and if it includes an employee or if we need to include him in that conversation. If we do not need to include him in that conversation, he is not a part of the timeline. Okay. If he is a part of the timeline, that process will still take place, and it just says by that certain day, he should be informed.
Right, but meanwhile, the principal or vice principal, whoever is in charge, has started an on-site investigation into what's happening.
Correct. As soon as they find out, they should begin.
That I wanted. Okay, it says administrator shall take all reports seriously. Yes, I highlighted that because I like that. So the investigation is day 3 to 5, and that is an overlap with the, if necessary, report to somebody at the district.
Correct.
Okay. So that means we now have a 5-day timeline, and for the telling notification of the principal and the investigation, we have a 5-day timeline. So I see there's something that says school day 7 to 10. I mean, it seems like school day 6 to 8, school day 7 to 10. I'm wondering if the parent decides to keep the student home pending the resolution, could this be as much? Sometimes parents will. They're saying, until you do something, I am keeping my child home. I'm sure you've heard that. And so is that going to be, are they going to be there for 10 days, or do you hope to have it resolved before that?
So it is the expectation when the administrator contacts that parent initially, they are to make sure that the parent has the opportunity to come in and set up a safety plan initially.
Okay, great.
Prior to the investigation, so that they're confident and comfortable that the student is safe.
Yes.
As the investigation continues.
That's what I want, is for parents to feel that their children are safe and for children to feel that they're safe. So thank
yes,
you.
That should happen initially, right at the very beginning.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do we have kids staying home and the parents agreeing to that?
If a parent decides to take that option, we don't encourage that. But yes, we do have parents that may make the decision to keep their child at home.
The reason I'm asking is because I have heard parents say, I am keeping my child home until something happens to keep him safe. I've heard that comment from parents.
That's what I was going to say is, while the investigation, is going on, a parent maybe feel more comfortable, and I think don't they offer independent study or, for that student for those 1 or 2 days they stay home?
That could be an option, definitely. When we are training our administrators and counselors, we talk about as soon as they get that initial report, that they identify a safety plan for that student to make sure that they're comfortable to go to class and make sure they're comfortable in receiving all the opportunities that every other student receives while the investigation is going. So that should happen initially. But if a parent says, no, I want to keep them home, it is our job to make sure that we provide the schoolwork for them.
Good, okay.
Thank you.
That was going to be my next question.
Okay, I only have, I think, one more question. It defines bullying, and and I'm not going to read that whole definition, but when the school does an investigation and says to the parents, this behavior does not meet the bullying guidelines, what do we do?
So it is our job, as we do, we look at the bully investigation and look at all the pieces. And if it meets the guideline, we go one path as far as establishing a safety plan. We address the victim as well as the suspects. If it doesn't meet that guideline, it's still our job to make sure the student feels safe. And so we still implement a safety plan. We still identify key areas for the student and the parent to make sure they're confident and comfortable with that student coming to school. And then it's follow-up. And so we don't just say, here, it doesn't fit the description. We still keep that safety plan in place, and then we are required to follow up. Check in with them maybe in a couple of days, a week, then follow up again in 2 weeks. It's our job to make sure that we keep them comfortable at school. We don't just want to say it doesn't fit and leave them.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. All of your hard work on this. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments?
Okay. Well, first thing I'd like to point out is great work. Thank you for all the time and effort you all put into this. One thing that I noticed right off the bat was the positive school climate when you guys took out as appropriate. That's great. And also removed may and put shall. So the district shall provide students with instruction in the classroom or other educational settings that promote social well-being, social emotional learning, effective communication, and conflict resolution strategies, and so forth. So that's great. So I'm a huge proponent for that, and thank you very much. With that said, I also would like to just point out a few things that I'm concerned about that I think we need to be a little bit more specific as it relates to the language being used in this policy when discussing how law enforcement are involved in reporting incidents, et cetera. So when we talk about and report incidents to the appropriate authorities, including law enforcement and instances of criminal behavior, I think in this specific policy, we really need to be specific on how staff and specifically when staff, and when it's okay to contact law enforcement. Just to be completely transparent, I'm concerned, and I know many of you all are as well, of opening the door to the school to prison pipeline, especially as it relates to our students of color. And so we've got to be very careful when we're talking about law enforcement and being so quick to engage law enforcement to deal with situations when we just need to engage a counselor, or we need to make sure that we're internalizing that social emotional support as opposed to getting law enforcement involved. Because I want to make sure that we're not criminalizing our youth. So I want to be, for me, this is my view, I think we need to be more specific on what it looks like when we engage law enforcement and when it's okay to do so. So anywhere we're seeing on this policy and may contact law enforcement. Well, when is it okay to contact law enforcement? It's not okay to contact law enforcement on every instance. And so on forth. So that's my view on that, and I hope that we can get that addressed. I don't want to hold up the policy because the timeline is very important to make sure that we're getting this information or dealing with and doing the investigations and contacting parents right away. But at the same time, we cannot create an unintentional path to the school to prison pipeline for our students. So I think we need to be very cognizant of that, and I'm concerned and make sure that we can be more specific.
But I have a question. As far as calling law enforcement, most of our schools have people on campus already. So when you say call, you mean physically make a phone call and have a police come, or you mean the police that's already there?
We currently have 9 SROs unless that number's changed. And so we have over 40-something schools, so not every school site has an SRO. if you're talking about security. But even if you have an SRO on campus, I do not believe it's appropriate to engage or involve that SRO in every disciplinary issue that comes about when we can be addressing it through social emotional supports that we have on our campus. The SRO is a sheriff's officer, a law enforcement officer, and I don't believe that that's their place.
That may be a discussion from one of our workshops that we may have, because if something occurs on the campus and we have the policeman there, so we're going to tell them to stay away and let me, the teacher, handle it? I'm not following what you're saying.
If I can add something to that, what I'm thinking is the idea that, we have our school discipline guide, and things that a school administrator, sequential discipline guide, that the administrator takes, care of. So it becomes a school issue, and we handle it, whether the consequence is. But when the law enforcement, whether they're called in from another site or the ones that are at our schools, when they get involved, then it becomes, correct me if I'm wrong, more of a law enforcement issue.
So how do we keep them away, though, if he's right there on campus?
And from my experience, I'm not the best one to I'll continue, is normally on a site, as an administrator, is you've got, if a fight occurs and the school can handle it, you got the two administrators there and able to handle it. In the past we could, we would deal with it with a suspension or whatever. But when the the SRO gets involved, then, we've had cases where they've been maybe arrested or something, so I think that's sort of where, some of the discussion is, the concern is, we want to try to handle as many things within, our sequential discipline guide and not involve the law, the SROs, unless we have to.
The sequential discipline guide does say specifically times in which you would include law enforcement. And so if it got to that place where we are moving down a direction of discipline, within the sequential discipline guide, it says specifically when, at what instance, law enforcement should be included. And it does give our staff that time. Also within our sequential discipline guide, it addresses the need for intervention, in addition to the need for following through with certain consequences. One thing that we do have is the district discipline committee. We meet regularly. That guide is updated. And one change that we have talked to them about addressing is really looking at those intervention pieces first prior to looking at the consequences. And so if you take a look, there are specific education codes that is addressed, and there are specific instances. So it might not be on the first offense, it may not even be on the second offense, but it then would include on a third offense, a certain discipline code, we would include law enforcement. So it is specific as to what you would like within that sequential discipline guide.
I think one of the things, like when we talked about the social emotional, as we look at other options, and resources, other than law enforcement, then I'm sure we're going to want to come back. We want to come back and relook at the sequential discipline guide. I mean, we don't do it. I mean, it's a committee, and I realize that with representatives from our different stakeholders. But I think we're on the policy for the anti-bullying. We've got the discipline guide and the sequential discipline guide, and we've got this policy. And it appears to me that the one concern by one of the board members is concern about what does this mean when we involve law enforcement within our policy. So I know the difference of someone's talking about what a policy is versus procedures and practices, because sometimes and not everything can be in a policy, but we want to make sure though we don't jump to have law enforcement right away. So I think that's sort of, so I don't, hear from someone else.
Maybe we should have put that on our suggestions for future agenda items, is to discuss the role of sheriff's officers versus campus security officers on our campuses. That's something I would be very interested in discussing or hearing a presentation on, which I don't think is part of this bullying policy. I'd like to go ahead and pass that the way it is, and maybe have a future discussion on that concept, sheriff officers versus campus security. What's the difference? What are their roles? When is one called in? When is the other one called in? So it's not like this is something a teacher couldn't handle. This would be something a campus security officer couldn't handle, and then the sheriff's department would step in. You know, you said, so you're going to let a teacher handle it instead of a sheriff. No, you're going to let a campus security officer and a principal handle it.
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Maybe you misunderstood me. I wouldn't want a teacher. That's why I say if we've got those people on the site, I couldn't imagine if we're going to tell them stay away. Let us, the administration, handle it.
And campus security.
It comes down to the point of law enforcement are not. Their profession is not to counsel. Their profession is not to de-escalate. We've seen this time and time again, and we need to make sure that we are protecting our young people and making sure that they have the social emotional support, especially the professionals that are skilled in that area to de-escalate and provide them the supports they need, so that they're not removing our young people with handcuffs through the front door of the school and taking them to juvenile hall like we've seen over and over again. So when I see that, when we're talking about this policy specifically, it's my view that we do need to be specific. Now, if we're talking about the disciplinary guide, discuss when it's appropriate to contact law enforcement. I mean, maybe we need to reference that in this policy, because this is a governing document as it relates to our anti-bullying policy. So this lays the foundation of the policy, the procedures that come after, and how this is implemented. So I am really concerned about just leaving the door open as it relates to including law enforcement. We need to be specific on when it's okay and when it's appropriate.
So, Mr. Peden, real quick, I completely understand where you're coming from in terms of policing our schools with law enforcement personnel. But in terms of the bullying policy or bullying protocols, that from a law enforcement's perspective, if it's not a crime, they're not getting involved in those investigations because there's no crime that's been committed. It's a school issue. It's a school process that needs to take place. Now, if there is an accusation of that a crime has been committed in terms of an assault or a threat, be directly or indirectly, then the administrations may have the option to include law enforcement. They're not required to include law enforcement in that investigation, if that makes sense.
Yes, it makes perfect sense, but what I'm concerned about is how someone's defining an assault or a battery.
Got it.
You and I both know that if a student pushes another student and that student is being targeted already, that law enforcement can just call that an assault, handcuff the student, and remove them off site.
Correct.
And then it escalates and it becomes a bigger issue. So those are the instances in which I'm concerned about, that maybe there was a shoving match or something, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't handle it as a district internally without criminalizing that young person and pushing them through the school to prison pipeline. Those are the instances what I'm concerned about, and how law enforcement interprets penal code violations much different than how we would interpret and deal with a young person that's having typical adolescent behavior.
Correct. We want to, our expectations when in terms of our SROs is that they are there not to police our schools, but to actually mentor and coach our students and build relationships. That's our goal with our SRO team. Not to police our schools, not to arrest our kids.
And I think that happens more often.
Correct.
And I take exception to that, where they're handcuffing our kids all the time. I know it's happened, but I want you to know that Daryl Scott is our Director of Safety and Security, and he works with me to work with law enforcement, to work with our students. And, we just had a meeting the other day with MVA, and one of the things he said was, we're really here to rehabilitate and coach and counsel. So, I know that there's been some things that have happened in our district, but that's not the rule or the norm. And, I've seen a lot of things happen, but I think being a principal of a school, they want their kids to be safe, and they want kids to, they want to do, they want to make sure interventions are in place, and they want to make sure that students are getting support. That it's not their goal to get them arrested. And they often, when there's some situation that, when you look at the board policy, it's for the administration and the district to implement, not the police or the sheriff. And so when we say may in there, that's something we work with our administrators on and talk to them about the times they do that. Not, and in fact, when I first came here, Dr. White had me go to schools and not have students arrested. So there's a different mindset here, even though since Diego's death, we have seen increased law enforcement presence sometimes, and that has happened because of community people in the community saying they wanted something done. So, but we have reached, we're at another point where we're looking at working with our schools and being more proactive and not reactive, but being supportive and working with our administrators. It's a work in progress. It's always, and our sequential discipline guide gives us specifically what's supposed to happen. I mean, it's very detailed. And so when a principal doesn't follow that, they have to fill out an exception form. And that has to be given to the teacher that they chose to do something different. So it isn't like that they just follow this, to the letter. They look to see what the student needs are and how they can involve the parent and make the student be rehabilitated and supported. Doesn't always work, doesn't always happen, but we keep working on it.
Thanks,
I don't know if
boss.
you want to add something to that.
I just wanted to add, we meaning student services, we get a copy of every student report of bullying. We have that online bullying line now. And so with that comes to myself as well as Ms. Chavez. So we take a look at everything. So within those reports, I can think of one specific example where we've had to include law enforcement. That was to support us and to help us. It was not actually to bring harm to a student. Actually, we needed their help in regards to doing some research and doing things that we as a district cannot do, utilizing social media and investigating social media posts. We can't do that on our own. We needed their support. So they were actually of help to us as opposed to hurting a student. They were supporting that student and actually helping us as we intervene and bring about support.
Okay, the one thing I noticed too, this, again, is policy, and you can't put everything in policy. So we have a policy about, main thing is anti-bullying. What are we going to do about the bullying? And then we have the sequential discipline guide, which is another topic, like we said, maybe for another time to look to ensure that we are providing all those supports, before we end up into the, a more, I guess, whether a suspension or an expulsion. So once a policy, if we approve this policy, then, I know there's a lot of steps. That policy is just a policy. There's got to be training. There's got to be procedures, systems, and I think those are the ones that are really critical on, okay, what does this mean? What is criminal behavior? And that's where that's laid out, to give because we owe it to our schools to give them guidance on how to react, to certain things, and so since this whole thing, the emphasis is somewhat new, I think a lot of those things would be addressed in the next steps, the procedures and systems.
It's my view. I mean, so I look at it a little differently. I look at policy as the governing document is the lifeblood of this district, and that's our job, is to set the policy and the governing documents, which informs everything we do. And so if we're not going to change, or if there's not agreement on the board to maybe be more specific about how law enforcement is involved in these instances, which I don't see that being not reasonable. I think it's completely reasonable to add that into this document. But if there's not agreement on this board to do that, then maybe there's agreement on the boards of creating a new policy, a law enforcement involvement policy or engagement policy of how this district is going to operate and engage law enforcement in disciplinary issues in this district. At the end of the day, we don't have something that's specific, unless I'm wrong, unless there's a policy in that way that informs that those protocols and those procedures of how we involve law enforcement. I haven't seen it. So that's something I'm interested in. If I hear a lot, and it's not my intention to point fingers or anything like that, but I hear a lot that we're interested in, everybody's interested in closing the school to prison pipeline. You close the school to prison pipeline through this policy, through our policies, by setting the standard of when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate to involve law enforcement. And if we're serious about getting that done, or if we're serious about making sure that we're providing the supports needed to our students, if we're serious about making sure that our students of color are not being targeted by police and criminalized, we need to be specific. So, I mean, that's my view. I can't support a policy that leaves the door open to the school to prison pipeline.
So if I understand it correctly, what you're asking is it possible to take this and define, because it does say including law enforcement in instances, what is criminal behavior, and the other says may contact, law enforcement. Is that possible to be more specific in the policy? We could take it back and add that. I mean, I know it delays it I need to hear from my colleagues about not voting on it, having it go back and be more specific in regards to law enforcement involvement.
I kind of think maybe it should be a separate thing. Not part of this bullying policy, but I think we should have a separate policy on when and how law enforcement is involved in our student discipline.
Yeah. And I have a question, Ms. Peden. You were talking about, was it prison to pipeline? I mean, what was that term again you used? School to prison. We have numbers on how many of our students go to prison? Because I'm wondering, I haven't seen that unless you've seen something I haven't seen.
You probably don't have numbers on that.
Because I'm just wondering, if we say that, then it's, to me, I thought, dog, how many kids do we have going to prison? But if we don't have the numbers, how can we say that? That's my point. Do we have numbers?
It's not my intention to get into a back and forth with you.
No.
Mr.
I was
Johnson.
just asking the question, because if we use that term.
The school to prison pipeline is not a term that specifically describes how many young people this district has sent to prison.
Okay.
The school to prison pipeline is a term that's used in terms of how the more likely a student is to go to prison and onto the school to prison pipeline when they're expelled, when they're involved in punitive measures, when you have police officers on your campuses. We know the research shows that you have instances where students of color are more likely to be entered into the school to prison pipeline when you have these scenarios and these circumstances and these specific mechanisms in your schools. And when you're getting involved and you're allowing law enforcement to be on your campuses, you increase the likelihood of your students, especially students of color, being entered into the school to prison pipeline. Significantly, you increase that likelihood. So when you're talking about the school to prison pipeline, you're talking about literacy, you're talking about ensuring that you're closing the opportunity gaps, the educational gaps. All of these things contribute or don't contribute to the school to prison pipeline. So this isn't specifically to law enforcement per se on campus, but it's a big part of it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, going back to the policy. I'm hearing two things. One is, we can go and take action on this. The other is, to have, go back and be more specific. Then, as Mrs. Smith said, is, act, on this policy with the idea we're going to come back and have a policy on when law enforcement is involved in issues on our campuses. So I need to hear from my colleagues.
Isn't that in the sequential discipline guide? When you involve law enforcement?
It is specifically in the sequential discipline guide.
Have y'all received a copy of that and read it?
I
because I think that we should give them a copy of it, because I thought I had given them a copy of it, but it's very clear in there what you do. Is it not?
It's very clear. It says contact law enforcement on specific ed codes and specifically when to include it. Yes.
And that is part of a contractual agreement with the bargaining unit, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah,
we
they
work
developed
with them.
it. Yeah.
Correct.
And it took years to develop, as I understand.
We work very hard. We meet monthly.
And that's received, Dr. Kidziora, but what we're discussing is a board policy, not a guide. So we want to we're talking about establishing a board policy that the Board of Education votes on that establishes when it's okay and when to involve law enforcement in this district.
Mr. Peden, I don't, if I'm going to, you're going to agree or I'm going to disagree, but a board policy is a global thing. It's not it's the vision, it's the broader picture. Administrative regulations are where you put the details. And in ours, the administrative regulation is the sequential discipline guide, which we have used in all of these instances. So, it's difficult to put specificity like that in a board policy because the administrative regulations are what guide the legs of the policy.
Well, I think it's worth, going back and forth, but in terms of being specific in here, we're not talking about adding 100 pages of detail, right? We're just asking for a few line items on here to be more specific when it's okay to engage law enforcement. We're talking about probably adding another paragraph to this policy that is the governing document to when it's okay. The board policies are the law. And that's why it's important that we establish that in here. And that's why I'm a huge proponent to what Board Member Smith put forward, a policy that discusses when it's okay to involve law enforcement.
Didn't you, when you revised it based on all of the recommendations you received from the board, didn't you put this through CSBA?
That's right. I definitely use CSBA as my main guideline.
And they vet it for school districts through their legal counsel so that we're not placing ourselves or our administrators in a position where they may be compromising the safety of students. That's why they use terms in there that are not specific, because you need some latitude when you're working on this at a school site.
Correct. And so we took it not only through CSBA. Once we wrote it, it was important to make sure we showed legal copies of this also, in addition to our bully prevention handbook. And so we made sure that we had the correct terminology and followed the guidelines as stated by California School Boards Association.
I would still like to adopt this policy tonight, go for a separate discussion on sheriff's deputies and school resource officers and their role in our schools. And I understand the need for some latitude.
I'm also, with Mrs. Smith, the idea of this, but, here's my big but. I really, truly believe that, well, number one, we need a copy of the, sequential discipline guide. I know I've seen one probably years ago, and I know that's been updated, but also that the steps, I think it's interesting to relook at that, and I know it's a committee. And the one thing we had talked about, maybe having a representative on the committee, a board member, or something to work collaboratively, because I think we're just wanting more options, because that's, when the school administrator looks at that, it goes, offense 1, 2, 3, and ideally you get to go through. But sometimes it jumps because of whatever happened, but it would be nice, and as we add more resources for our kids, conflict resolution, the idea of a counselor, that's, trained in trauma, working, being called into the student, because they escalate.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens when a student escalates, it's how you respond to them. A lot of times, the first thing we do, someone goes forward and gives them a directive instead of standing back and saying, take a few minutes and think, but they're just strategies. So, I mean, I'm like Ms. Smith. I mean, I know I could go forward with the idea that we're going to look at a policy, concerns about with police officers on our campus, and relook. We want to, see what is in the sequential discipline guide. We don't develop it. We know it's a committee, but to come back and look, or have we covered all of our bases? Because I think as we add resources in social emotional, in the wraparound services, hopefully we get to the point that we're not expelling kids, or if we are, it's going to be very, very, very rare. So I'm willing to go forward with the policy and take a vote with the idea that we do, the other steps.
And this will be my last comment. I'll just, because I need to make sure that it's clear. I support this policy. I support the work that you all have done. I think it's an urgent topic to ensure that we move things along very quickly as it relates to incidents of bullying in our district. And I want to pass this policy. However, I can't support a policy that leaves the door open to the school to prison pipeline. And on the first reading, I asked for that to be included in here. I guess it wasn't on the priority list. In terms of when we need to involve law enforcement, that wasn't addressed in here. Everything else was. So for that reason, I'm not going to be voting yes on this. We need this though, but this piece is too important of a piece just to leave out and allow kids to be criminalized. So for that reason, I'm going to be voting no on this.
Are we ready for a motion?
Do I have a motion to approve, the board policy 5131.2, anti-bullying students? Do I have a
So
motion to
moved.
approve? Do I have a second? Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Peden?
No.
Dr. Locke?
Aye. Motion passes 3-1. Moving to I3A, second interim financial report. Ms. Lopez, this is your item.
Yeah, it's a PowerPoint like this. It should be. That's it. No, it's like this. I know, I'm telling you. I'm sorry.
Good evening. Tonight, we're going to share with you our second interim financial report. As we go through this presentation, I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to ask questions if you have any. Also, this is a summary item. The full second interim financial report was an attachment to the agenda. It's about a 125-page document, so this is just a short summary. And also just want to thank the staff that's involved with the preparation of the second interim financial report. There's a lot of staff that's working behind the scenes to make sure that all of our numbers are accurate and that the information presented is always done in an accurate and timely manner. So with that, we have reviewed our mission statement and the 11 commitments. So for sake of time, we're going to go right to the 2021 governor's budget proposal. Mid-January, Governor Newsom released the preliminary look at our 2021 budget. Why is this critical, you might ask? Well, even though we are right in the middle of 1920, in the business department, we always work really with a minimum of 3 years worth of data. And so one of the items is that we have to make sure that we present information on our multi-year projections. And so always living in current year, but looking to the 2 out years at a minimum. Looking at the governor's January budget proposal, there is some additional funding allocated for LCFF, or what is referred to as local control funding formula. The reason we always focus on that is that's what generates most of the revenues. That is the percentage increase to our average daily attendance, ADA, which is how we're funded. So looking specifically at 2021, there was a revised projection figure last year The estimate was we would be looking at a 3% COLA, and now based on this January revision, it's a 2.29% COLA. And so we've adjusted revenues in the out years to account for that. Why is that important? If we look at the next slide, because I'm going to talk about also what's not in the budget, you have to remember that beginning in 2012, 2013, every school district in California, we were accustomed to, this was the beginning of receiving double-digit percentage increases to our revenues. The reason why is that 12-13 is when we were coming out of the recession. The purpose and the goal was that we were going to be restored back to 07-08 funding levels, because that's when all school districts received significant cuts. And so beginning in 12-13, we were receiving the increases because we were bridging that gap of that targeted amount that we would restore us to 07-08. And so every year you were receiving, in addition to COLA, you were receiving gap funding increases. And so that stopped, right? They've restored us back to 07-08, though if you look closely at that, prior to, or in 07-08, we weren't responsible for items such as STRS and PERS liabilities. So there's still doubt as to whether that restoration took place or not. But we're living now in COLA-only world, and when it comes to increases in revenues. And so when you look at the increases of 2.29%, yes, we appreciate any increase, but it's not the 9, 10, 11, 12% increases in revenues that we were accustomed to using. And so what that has done is really shifted the way that you look at budgets, because now with no more high increases to your revenues, you really have to take a look at your expenditures and make sure that our projections are accurate, not only for current year, but that we have assumptions that we're very confident with, that we have backup to support our projections in the next 2 years, because we will need to be able to certify a budget based on the 3-year span. So looking again at that 2021 governor's budget proposal, what was not included in the budget, those increased LCFF targets. We're not seeing the 9, 10, 11% gap funding because we've been restored to 07-08 levels. So all we're seeing is COLA. We're not seeing the contributions or a reduction to the CalSTRS and CalPERS percentages like we did last budget year. In regards to CalSTRS and CalPERS, those percentages are projections. We receive about 4 or 5 years worth of projections, but last year had received really good news because those percentages were revised and they were actually benefiting us. The percentages were lower. So we didn't see any of that, we're not seeing any of that in 2021, projected for 2021. And we're also not seeing any one-time discretionary grants. Why do we like discretionary grants? They're unrestricted, right? They can be spent on anything. One of the things, though, is that I just want to reiterate, this is really that first look at 2021. Now the governor has rolled out his proposal. His proposal, again, includes some one-time programs, very much more now in the form of categoricals. There's some one-time monies that he's proposing that are allocated to the areas of nutrition services. There's some areas for special education funding, as well as one-time funds for educator recruitment and preparation. So there's some one-time funds, but more in the sense of a categorical, not the discretionary grant that we were used to seeing. And then finally, these are just proposals. This is what we know today. And so our second interim report is based on projections, based on the assumptions we know today. Governor is working on negotiating back in Sacramento, and so the next time we're going to see more updated information will be in May. Mid-May is usually when a new revision, what is known as a May revise, will be released, and at that time we'll make our updates to our out years in regards to budgets. Specifically, what is this interim financial report for? Well, it's a requirement. The boards have to certify at least twice a year, first interim, which was presented to you in December, and now today, which we're presenting our second interim. We're looking at actual information now through January 31st. So we have 7 good months of expenditures, payroll expenditures, purchase orders, you name it. And so now we take all of that information, do our analysis, work collaboratively with departments and school sites to have that communication of what is the money going to be spent on? Because it's not just a matter of how much money are we going to be spending, but you've noticed that we have to categorize it. In what areas? Are they going to be salaries? Are they going to be books, supplies? Are they going to be services or contracts? And so we need that collaboration, because in the business office, we will work with the numbers, but we need to have those dialogues so that we understand the program side and the initiatives taking place to do that. This report hopefully will be approved by the board tonight and then sent off to our COE, Riverside County Office of Ed, for review, and then ultimately ends up at the state level. Again, all projections are though through June 30th. With an interim report, we have to recommend a certification. This evening, we are going to recommend a positive certification. A positive certification means that we are certifying that we are projecting that we will meet our projected 3% required reserve at the end of that third year for current year and 2 subsequent years. The other options are qualified. That's in the case that a district might not be able to meet its financial obligations for any of the 3 years, and then a negative certification, in which case the district would not be able to meet its obligations for current year. But we are very excited and happy to report that we're recommending a positive certification. The interim report, the backup that you receive with this agenda item, is split into 5 major sections. And so the first section are your fund forms. These are listed by fund, and Jessica will go more into detail towards the end of the presentation in regards to what those funds are. Cash, we have to report what our cash balance is, as well as our projections for next year. The multi-year projections, that's probably the most important document or section in this interim report. And so if you want to really take a look and focus on, I would recommend it be your multi-year projections. Criterion standards, which are the different measurements that the states use to compare the data. And then finally, the certification. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jessica Garcia, our Director of Business, who's going to go more into detail about the numbers that apply specifically to our district.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Ketziora, members of the cabinet. Tonight we have for you the enrollment history and projections. And we first introduced this slide to you at first interim. And when you saw it at first interim, it had what we thought was going to be an estimated number for 1920. Well, as we approach second interim, now we have a realistic actual number that shows the enrollment for the district for the current year. So 1920 is no longer an estimation, it's 32,169. Based on the district trend, we're seeing that in the out years, the district does continue to decline enrollment. Susanna and I did discuss some programs before coming out to do the presentation tonight as to what's the district doing in order to try to capture or retain enrollment. And right now, the district actually has some new programs that they're starting in the new school year, which is the full day kinder. For TK, and then the 6th grade DLI at elementary schools. And then they're also looking at piloting out a 6th grade program into a couple of elementary schools to see if that's going to help support the retaining or attraction for enrollment in our area. One thing I do want to point out, though, districts in Riverside County and San Bernardino County, and mostly in the state, are seeing a decline in enrollment right now. We're all still trying to figure out what the issue is, but hopefully with these programs, our district can go ahead and retain or attract more students. Okay, and then we also have something that we started this last year, which is School of Choice. So the School of Choice program is something where our parents in the community can decide if they want to focus on a performing arts pattern for their student to go into, or more of a STEAM program. So some of the schools in our district have those programs available that families can choose from. So as far as what the district's doing to help to avoid so much of a decline, it's these programs right here. Okay. Our next slide focuses on the district ADA. And again, the 1920 number was a projection at first interim, and now you're seeing the actual number, which is 30,293.54. Again, same thought process for the decline in enrollment. We apply that same decline to the ADA. The ADA simply means that this is the percentage, these are the actual numbers of students that are attending school. for one particular given day, which was taken back in October at Seabed's Day. One of the things that we do want to point out to you, and that you'll see in another slide, is that in the 2021 school year, any in ADA that drops below 30,000 for our districts in the state, there, instead of it being a 2% reserve for economic uncertainty, it then triggers a 3% reserve for economic uncertainty. So we discussed that at first interim when we thought, okay, we're going to probably be going there. And now, as you can see with our ADA for 1920, we see it a little bit closer for the 2021. So that's something you'll see as I discuss the other slides where we detail the reserves and components of the ending fund balance. You'll see the 3% in the out years. Okay?
Interrupt you, but that's a key point that you just made, and I don't know that everybody's always, I mean, I just want to say I didn't always know this. So did y'all all, I mean, I just want to make sure you caught that because, okay.
Below 30,000? You said something about below 30,000?
Yes, sir. So once our ADA in the district hits a certain area under 30,000, we're required by the state to put aside a reserve instead of 2%, which we've historically had, to 3%. So we have to set that aside instead of, it's a 1% increase to our reserves.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
For about $4 million.
Right. In dollar wise, it's an extra approximate $4 million. And you'll see the change in a couple more slides. You're going to see the change from this year's economic uncertainty dollar amount to the out year. So this year, you'll see the switch. I think it's in about 2 more slides.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. And so the major assumption slide, again, we're recapping what we did for second interim. You're also going to see first interim in there and then what we're projecting. So you'll see for current year, we are at 3.26% COLA. And then as Susanna shared earlier, now we're seeing the governor saying in 2021 we're going to have 2.29%. And then it goes out to 21-22, projected again 2.71. You'll see the unduplicated rolling average for current year at second interim is 84.31%. And then again, I just show you the enrollment numbers and how they're changing. So prior slide was a graph, and right here now it's a chart to show you the actual numbers for current interim reporting period. And then again, we show you 2 years out. Okay?
Just want to point out another thing, may I? And Susanna, you may want to comment on this, but when it talks about the ADA percentage, how that could change because we're working on attendance, and so I think that's an important piece right there.
Yes, and so attendance is really something that is monitored every month. There's a lot of communication that takes place. There's the reports that go out to school sites. At the beginning of the year, the goal is 95% attendance, and so it's really important that we look at, like when we have the STEAM Saturday events and attendance is being recouped, that we're actually incorporating that information into our projections and looking at historically what we are doing. The other piece too with the attendance is also being aware of when things are happening. For example, looking at what is attendance like looking maybe this week and past week when there's fears out there, right, about actually going to school. And so being able to look at those things ahead of time so that we can be able to incorporate any changes, because attendance percentage is what generates that ADA number, which generates your funding. And our unrestricted budget or general fund budget is about $425 million. And the majority of our revenues comes from attendance. And so attendance is something that we look at critically. And, knowing that we have programs like A2A, attention to attendance, and looking at all of the initiatives so that we can incorporate all of that as we're updating our projections. And so attendance is something that is looked at, studied closely, monitored, making sure that people are on top of taking attendance, that if folks aren't taking attendance, we have that communication taking place with principals. Because remember, if somebody doesn't take attendance, then the way that our attendance system works is it assumes that you have 100% attendance for the day. And if you have 3 students absent, that's not accurate. And so we need to make sure that we are monitoring that so that we have accurate information at all times.
Do you know if we do something about it if students don't show for 2 or 3 days?
Yeah, there's a lot being done. It starts really at the school sites, the phone calls taking place at the school sites. And then, you know, if things aren't being addressed or there's still problems with the absences, I know then CWA comes into place, and there's different programs and initiatives that are done at the different levels.
Yeah, letters start going home, and then conferences are held.
So we don't.
Jason Ramirez even talked today in principals meeting about if your students in special ed, which we find a lot of students have attendance issues, and he talked about having an attendance IEP, because many times that's not addressed always through the IEP, but we're doing that so that you know, parents and community members can know that how important attendance is. So that's why letters are so important and following up on it. But we sometimes work on what if there's something missing in the family, what we can provide so they can come to school.
So do we physically go to the home and?
Well, the wellness center does a lot to help with that, because they make referrals to the wellness center, and then they help get things to families or help them get what they need. So that, like the shower, the washer and dryer, the food, the clothes. When you discover those things are missing, the school makes a referral, and they work to provide that.
Okay, so going back to this slide, you'll also see that we assume for the step-in column averages for the out years, that's for the employee salaries there. Susanna mentioned earlier what's not in the budget. We don't have any one-time mandate dollars for current year, and we don't expect them in the out years. I mean, it used to be nice when we can put dollar amounts in there. We're not putting them in right now. And then the STRS and PERS, you get to see where we're at for current year as an employer contribution, and then how it increases in the out years for us. And you'll see, though, in the 21-22, I've mentioned this before, the STRS is expected to go down, so we'll see a slight savings there. But again, this can all change. These are all just projections, right? And then same thing, second interim, we didn't really have any adjustments. I mean, we all know the retro and the off schedule took place at first interim, as well as the health and welfare one-time contribution. So we didn't make any adjustments at second interim to any large ticket items that needed to be mentioned for the salaries or for the employee benefits either, okay? All right, so this is the slide that Susanna had mentioned earlier, that we'd go a little bit more into detail, and this right here is the unrestricted general fund budget. This is the one where you get to see the bulk of the dollars for the district. This is where the dollars are going, the unrestricted side. For second interim, you do see that we have assignments that are in there for our economic uncertainty. And you'll see, Mr. Johnson, in the second interim column that goes down, it says reserve for economic uncertainty is $9.3 million. So right now we're above that 30,000 mark, right? But then if you look to the right of that for 21-22 and then the year after, you'll see it jumps to 13 and some change. That's that 3%. So it's that 1% difference of about 4 million that Susanna had shared with you. So that's the impact you'll see right there. We also do our reserves for declining enrollment for current year. We have that reserved right now. Our vacation payables, technology lease, the textbooks. And then we have our reserve for deficit spending for the projected year, but then also for the out years. You're going to see that in the second interim reporting, and you're going to see that in the out years as well. So good news here is we're ending with a positive ending fund balance in the general fund budget, which is going to contribute to that positive certification. On this previous slide, you will see a contribution that goes into our restricted fund, and I wanted to explain the contribution to you and tell you how it all ties out. So from that unrestricted fund, we contribute to the restricted side. The restricted contribution that we're putting into, the two major ones that add up to the $62 million is Routine restricted maintenance, it's $13 million, and that's per ed code. We have to look at our total general fund expenditures and set aside 3% for any routine restricted maintenance for current year. Also, you'll see the special education contribution that we're making as well, which is about $48 million right now at second interim. So on the restricted side of the budget, again, it's the same thought process. You're going to see the revenues and expenditures. And then, but this one right here, you'll see in second interim, there's the other financing sources line, and it says $62,281,375. That's the total from the prior slide. So we tie it back for you to show how the general fund is supporting on the restricted side for the contributions. And then the out years, we're projecting the contributions there as well. And you'll see, again, the ending fund balance for each of these out years. Now this is the combined picture for both restricted and unrestricted. And again, now this is just everything collapsed together. It has the same effect. Now it's just the numbers have been added up. And you'll see that at the end still, we have an ending fund balance for each year, and we're able to meet those reserve requirements to receive the positive certification. This right here is just a snapshot that I like to share with you at each interim reporting and even during budget time, where you get to see the other funds. So the prior slides were our general fund, and it's the unrestricted and restricted side. But then these are all the other funds that support the programs and services within our district. So you have the charter fund, you have adult education, the child development, which is early Head Start preschool, cafeteria fund, which is nutrition, and then you have the building funds, capital facilities, county facilities. You have Fund 40, which is special reserve fund, and then the bond and interest redemption fund. All these funds here are supporting the district in capacity for facilities, for building. Some of them are for modernization. So all of these funds are tied to different functions within the district, and we like to give you their beginning balances, what's going on with them for their revenues, where are we at on our spending, and how we expect to end for the year. And then we also have Fund 67, which is our self-insurance fund. Do you guys have any questions for us following this?
Facilities, the new facilities that's coming up in Moreno Valley High School, is that on here someplace?
So if you look at our facility projects, the majority of the funding for those projects would be out of Building Fund 21, which is where the Measure M funds are located. They're tracked separately because we have different reporting requirements, separate audit. Okay. So you see that under Fund 21. But we also might use a combination of Fund 25 developer fees. Do want to point out Fund 40, that special reserve fund. That is that fund that's designated for Moreno Elementary School. Mm-hmm. And so you can see that that fund has approximately Fund 40, the special reserve fund.
Yeah.
That fund has approximately $30 million in it. We're anticipating to be able to deposit some revenues for the sale of the two parcels that were approved as surplus lots. And so we'll be able to take that income from that sale and add to Fund 40, because as you know, I believe Moreno Elementary was about 35 million. And so at this time, we're a little short, but we're hoping that the sale of those parcels will mitigate that.
What are they going to do with those parcels? Do you know?
The people that are buying them?
Yeah.
You know what? I don't know.
No problem. I just wondered, because it's like a useless to me.
Okay, I'm very time cognizant. We have a board policy to finish by 10:30. And we've had a full agenda tonight, so I need to ask my colleagues if they're willing. We can one time to vote or make a motion to stay, up until 11 o'clock, with the idea that we will rush through the rest of the items and get out of here before that time. But just to get through the rest of the agenda items, do I have a motion to a board to approve staying? Yeah, and we'll not have board comments. And we'll go through because we have to do this, the budget, and then we've got, I think, 2 or 3, very quick items, that really need to be done tonight. They're time sensitive, thank you. And if we agree to that, then we'll suspend board comments and get out of here as soon as possible. But I need approval from my colleagues.
I mean, just to be honest, I don't like rushing through agenda items, so I'm not happy about this because, I mean, even I have a lot of questions for you all, but I could literally take up a half hour on some of the things that I have questions about. I want to thank you all for your presentation and everything that you put into it and all the effort, and thank you for all the work you're doing, especially as it relates to us getting a positive certification. That's great news, so keep up the great work. So, I mean, I don't like rushing, but if there's some things that are time sensitive, I don't mind moving, putting forward a motion to extend, if there's a second. I mean, I'm also kind of in between though.
I'll second it.
Roll call.
Mr. Johnson?
Oh. Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Peden?
Aye.
Dr. Locke?
Aye. Sorry for the interruption. You can continue, please.
I think we were.
Oh, you're done. Okay, questions?
Yeah, that was
okay,
it.
so,
Yeah.
so
He's
Mr.
done.
Peden, if you have some questions that you need to have answered, then,
I'm not sure it's urgent, but I'll
Okay.
circle back.
okay.
Okay, in that case, I would like to move that we approve the second interim report as presented.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Peden?
Aye.
Dr. Locke?
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you so much for a wonderful report. And we will be taking this home too and digesting more of it. Okay, moving to item I4A, approved board resolution number 2019-20-51, elimination of certain classified bargaining unit positions. Dr. Verde?
Thanks very much, Dr. Locke. This is an item I bring periodically to help us address the needs of the district and also place employees in positions where they are needed. I'm asking the school board tonight to approve the elimination of these 4 instructional assistant positions. In each of these cases, the students have either moved on or left the district, so we have been able to place the affected employees with other students who have this need for a one-on-one instructional assistant. And as always, we do this collaboratively with the association to make sure that the membership is placed appropriately.
Any questions? Do I have a motion to approve?
I move that we approve resolution number 2019-2051 as presented.
Do I have a second? Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Peden?
Aye.
Dr. Locke?
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Moving to I4B, approved board resolution number 2019-20-63, elimination of certain certificated bargaining unit positions, effective July 1, 2020. Dr. Verde?
Thank you, Dr. Locke. This is one of those time-sensitive ones that you referred to a few moments ago. This is for certificated bargaining unit positions. So this time of year, the site principals get together with their school site councils. They review their budgets, their Title I funded positions. They look at the effectiveness of those positions and decide where to either move forward with continuing some of those positions or placing those teachers in other areas of need at their site. So tonight, the district is asking for these 3 positions that you see listed on the agenda item to be eliminated. There are 2 affected teachers that will be placed at their home sites, but in other roles, but they will not be in these particular title positions, as these were highlighted by the school site councils and the principals as not being needed at these particular times.
So what you're saying is that they will still have jobs?
Yes, everyone does have a job, but we did have to do this before the 15th, but the affected employees, 2 in this case, do have jobs still.
And so they've been notified and everything, right? So,
Yes, they have been notified, and
they're okay?
they're okay. We're just kind of waiting to see about where they'll land, but they've already been given some assurances that they should be able to land at their home schools.
Good, all right.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve it.
Second? Who wants to second? You both?
Who did the motion?
You both, who made motion to approve? You said at the same time. CJ, motion to approve?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Peden?
Aye.
Dr. Locke?
Aye. Moving to I4C, approved memorandum of understanding between the Moreno Valley Unified School District and Moreno Valley educators. Association for monetary incentive for difficult-to-fill positions in math, science, special education, DLI instructors with BCLAD, speech language pathologists, and school nurses. Dr. Verdi, can you explain?
Thank you, Dr. Locke. We've been able to bring this for the last couple of years, and this is another time-sensitive item in that we've negotiated this with MVA, kind of worked out the details. We've offered incentives for hard-to-fill positions in the teaching ranks over the last 4 years, and we try and remain competitive with the other districts in the county. This is the prime recruiting season. We've already attended a couple of local university job fairs. We have our district job fair coming up over the spring break in the next couple of weeks, and that really is been the most successful venue for us to sign teachers. So we look at the competition, so to speak. We see what they're offering in these particular areas, have those conversations with MVEA in order to try and recruit folks in math, science, special education, dual language immersion, being fully credentialed with the BCLAD, speech language pathologists, which is always a difficult position to fill, and also this year we've added school nurses because we've identified a need there with the association and with the site principals about trying to recruit to fill some of our vacancies in that area. So tonight the district is asking the board to go ahead and approve this. I do want to thank Dr. Kedziora for his support of this, and also Susanna for making sure that we have the funds to carry this out, because it really is critical for recruiting.
Any questions?
I just want to let y'all know that I asked Dr. Verdi to have recruiting done at CASA and at CAVE, because one of the things that we want to do, our teaching force doesn't always resemble our students. And we do know that the research says when they have people who look like them and different things, that they, do better in school. So he is doing that, and I want to thank him for that, because that's part of this, is having this as an incentive to fill those positions, but also to be doing it in places where we haven't always done it before. And I just hope you know that our administrative team is very diverse and reflects in many ways our student population, but then that's been intentional. But our teaching force has, it's because who applies or we get to. But that's another area that we're working on to make sure that we increase the number of African American, Hispanic, and other student groups that are represented in our district. And I just want to thank them for getting that in place. Thank you.
Dr. Locke, because I don't think we're doing board comments at the end of this, so I just wanted to say thank you for being intentional on that, Dr. Kedziora and Dr. Verdi and Cabinet. That's extremely important.
I agree. Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the signing bonus as presented.
Do I have a second? Go. See Joe second.
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Peden?
Aye.
Dr. Locke?
Aye. Motion moves 4-0. Okay, next one, J1, job description, digital media specialist. This is informational only?
Yes.
Okay.
In both of these job descriptions, the digital media specialist, Dr. Locke, and then the next one right after this is the head custodian one. There's been no change to the pay rates for these particular job descriptions, but as part of our ongoing negotiations with CSEA, we update the job descriptions to make sure they're meeting industry standard, meeting the needs of the district, and that they're current. So we've given you the most recently negotiated copies of those two job descriptions here.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. That brings us to the comments from board members and superintendent. I think I made a motion to bypass this tonight. Are we okay with that? Or
cut it.
Or cut it?
Okay. Well,
cutting. Yeah, I think I did say we're cutting it tonight, and then next time we'll have it. Well, I think we, in our respect, to get out of here as close to 10:30 as possible, we were going to cut it tonight. Okay, then the meeting's adjourned at 10:34.
Dr. Kedziora, I'll hold this piece until the next time we come, because I definitely want to say something.